I will also explain the concept. So first of all, let's see which type of question have been asked. Like XYZ trader, Indian exporter, is negotiating a trade agreement with ABC Corporation, who is a foreign buyer in Dubai. They must decide on the most suitable Incoterms for their transaction. The goods will be shipped from Mumbai port to Jebel Ali port in Dubai. Following below are the specific situation where different Incoterms comes into play. Now, under FOB, who is responsible for the risk and cost of loading goods into the ship at Mumbai port? So this type of question is generally asked in the examination. You can see I have prepared 5 questions based on this. So before going to this question, let's first understand the concept, because in our each and every case study video, our methodology is the same. First of all, I will let you understand the concept in the simplest way possible, in the layman terms, and then after we will see this particular question. Just 5 minutes, listen to my words, and you will be able to solve all these questions with ease. Let's see. So friends, what are Incoterms? So first of all, before understanding this particular question, what are Incoterms? You know, for understanding Incoterms, I take an example. Let's say Ramesh in India. Right? He is selling goods to Ahmed in Dubai. Ahmed is another person in Dubai, and Ramesh is selling goods to Ahmed in Dubai. But they are confused, right? For what they are confused? They are confused for few things. Let me tell you that what are they confused? They are confused about who will arrange the shipping. They are confused about this. Second thing, they are confused about who will pay the insurance. Third thing, they are confused about what if custom duties are required, who will pay them. To avoid confusion, we use Incoterms. What we use? We use something called Incoterms. Incoterms mean international trade rule. Simple word we can say, these are the international trade rule. This Incoterms tells us that who does what, who pays what. How do Incoterms help? They divide the work between the seller and buyer, right? The Incoterms divide the work between seller and buyer. One type seller, another type buyer. So divide the work between these two. Who will handle the transport? Who will handle the customs? Who will arrange insurance? But remember, Incoterms are only about seller and buyer responsibility. They don't involve the shipping company. Shipping company has nothing to do with these Incoterms. Now, there are 4 group of Incoterms, right? What are the 4 group? The first is departure. Try to understand what I am telling you. The first is departure. So, in the case of departure, seller does minimum work. Remember this. In the case of departure, seller does minimum work. For example, EXW, which we call as X work. This is a type of Incoterms, right? So the seller only keeps goods ready at their factory or workplace. You can see this EXW. You can see this. The warehouse service and export packaging by seller, and the rest everything like loading at port at origin inland freight, origin port charge, origin forwarded fee, ocean and Asian air freight, destination port charge, custom clearance, custom duty, all these things are paid by the buyer. So the buyer has to pick up the goods, arrange transport and pay for everything else. Think of it as here are your goods, now it's all your responsibility. ये तुम्हारा goods है, अब बाकी 4 चीज़ तुम देख लो. Like Ramesh keep the goods ready in Pune, Ahmed arrange everything else. This is called EXW, and it is a part of the departure. Understood? Now this is the first part. The second part is main carriage paid. Main carriage paid. That means seller pay for shipping. That is why main carriage paid, right? So the seller pays for shipping to the destination. For example, you can take CFR. You can see here, this is CFR. So the seller pay for the shipping to the destination port, but the buyer arrange the insurance. Insurance is arranged by the buyer. For example, Rame paid to send goods to Dubai port, but Ahmed arranged the insurance. You can see warehouse service seller, export packaging seller. I am talking about this particular column. Export packaging seller, loading at port of origin seller, origin land freight seller, origin port charge seller, origin forward fee seller, but ocean and freight charge buyer. Destination port charge, ocean and freight charge to seller, but destination port charge, custom clearance, custom duty, these are borne by the buyer. Insurance payment by the buyer. So seller pay to the destination port, from the shipping to the destination port, right? So this is CFR, cost and freight. Understood? What is CFR? buyer arranged the insurance, seller paid for shipping to the destination port. Till shipping, seller arranged. That is called CFR, cost and freight. That is why two words have been included, cost and freight. Now then we have under this main carriage paid, we have the second part. This is called CIF. What is CIF? Cost, insurance and freight. You can see this CIF. So the seller pay for both shipping and insurance until the goods reaches the destination port. So it is similar to CFR, but had there been insurance also, that insurance would also have been paid by the seller. For example, Ramesh ensured that goods are insured and shipped safely to the Dubai. So these are the two parts we have discussed. The third part is main carriage unpaid. Main carriage unpaid. Right. So in this case, buyer takes more work. Buyer more work. Just for example, like you take FOB. You can see this FOB, free on board. So the seller delivered the goods onto the ship at the port of origin. The seller delivered the goods onto the ship at the port of origin. After that, buyer does everything. Shipping. You can see this is shipping. Ocean and freight charge is shipping. Insurance, customs, everything is held by the buyer. But seller provide till the port of origin. For example, Ramesh load the goods onto ship in Mumbai. Ahmed take over from there. So this is called main carriage unpaid. Then we have arrival. So this arrival also comes under I think arrival is the next part. Okay. So I have told you to divide into 5 parts. Then we have fourth part is arrival. Under arrival you can take DPU. Arrival means seller does maximum work. DPU, delivery at place unloaded. What is the full form of DPU? Delivery at place unloaded. So you can see this DPU here. So in this DPU you can see the seller deliver the goods to the buyer location and even unload them. You can see destination port charge, ocean and freight charge, shipping charge, port charge, everything is borne by the seller, right? So for example, Ramesh shipped the goods to Ahmed warehouse in Dubai and unload them. And under the arrival we have DDP also. DDP, yes, DDP, correct, DDP. DDP means delivery duty paid. DDP means delivery duty paid. Delivery duty means sellers did everything. Shipping, insurance, custom and delivery. You can see this DDP. Everything is done by the seller, right? So Ramesh handle all the work and deliver the goods to the Ahmed doorstep. Now, who takes the risk? So we have discussed the 4 part, right? Let me again remind you the key part which we have discussed. The first part was departure. That means seller only handle the departure part. For example, I have discussed the EXW. Buyer does the maximum work. Then after we discuss main carriage paid. That means seller paid for the main carriage. Main carriage paid. Under it we have discussed one CFR, another is we have discussed is CIF. In CFR, that is cost and freight. That means seller pays for shipping to the destination port, but buyer arrange insurance. That is CFR. And CIF, seller also arrange for insurance. That is main carriage paid. The third part we have discussed is main carriage unpaid. Main carriage unpaid, like DDP and FOB. FOB comes under main carriage unpaid. That means seller delivered the goods onto the ship at the port of origin. FOB you can see onto the boats onto the same port at origin, but after that is arranged by the buyer. And then we have discussed arrival. Arrival means DDP and DPU. DPU and DDP, these are the arrival. Now the next pertinent question is who takes the risk? Question is who takes the risk? See, try to understand. For the buyer, like EXW is the riskiest because the buyer has to handle transport, custom and insurance. And for the seller, this CIP and this DDP, you can see CIP and DDP, these are the riskiest because the seller pay for shipping. So let's summarize. Incoterms make international trade easy by dividing responsibility clearly. EXW means buyer does almost everything, and DDP means seller does everything. Think of it as work sharing agreement for seller and buyer in the global trade, right? So if you are seller, always want less responsibility, choose EXW, and if you are buyer and want less hassle, choose GDP. Now let's come back to the question. Hopefully the concept is clear now. Now let's come back to the question. Now you can see how confidently you can answer all the question. Let's see the first question. So let's see this particular question, what it is talking about. So let's say okay, so we have understand this particular question. So XYZ trader, Indian exporter, is negotiating a trade agreement with ABC Corporation. Okay, he is negotiating and trade agreement with ABC Corporation, a foreign buyer. So this is exporter means seller, and this ABC is buyer. Okay, they must decide on the most suitable Incoterms for their transaction. The goods will be shipped from Mumbai port to the Dubai. Now first question, under the FOB, that is free on board, that is FOB Incoterms, who is responsible for the risk and the cost of loading goods onto the ship at Mumbai port, right? So it is shipped from Mumbai port to Dubai port. So suppose this is Mumbai port and this is Dubai port. Under FOB, that is free on board, who is responsible for the risk and cost of loading goods onto the ship? So just now we have discussed what happened under FOB. If you remember it quite clearly, that FOB comes under what? Main carriage unpaid. That means buyer takes more work. So the seller delivered the goods onto the ship at the port of origin after that buyer. So who is responsible for the risk and cost of loading goods onto the ship at Mumbai port? Obviously it will be the seller. It will be the seller, because in FOB the seller takes the responsibility of loading the goods onto the port, onto the vessel. So obviously option number A, seller, is correct, right? So FOB, the seller, is responsible for delivering the goods on board. Next question, under which Incoterms does the seller bear the maximum responsibility, including cost, insurance, freight, until the goods reaches the destination port? Already we have discussed it is DDP. It is DDP, duty delivery paid. Option number 4 is correct. I think correct answer will be DDP, not CIF. CIF also it is responsibility of higher responsibility, but comparatively DDP is more responsibility, right? So option number 4 is more appropriate here. Next question is, under DDP, who is responsible for paying import duty and tax? Obviously seller. Under DDP, seller is responsible for everything. Seller does everything: shipping, insurance, custom, delivery, everything. And the last question is, under DPU, who is responsible for unloading goods at the destination? Obviously it is seller, right? In DPU, that is delivery at place of unload, the seller must ensure that the goods are unloaded at the agreed place of destination. And in which Incoterms does the buyer bear the maximum risk and responsibility once the goods leave the seller premises? FOB, DPU, X work, CIF. That correct? Go through all these important case study. There is high probability that you may get same type of question in the examination. So let's begin with the first case study that we have. It is the first important thing to know, that is under Article 4 of the UCPDC 600. So a letter of credit is completely independent from the underlying sales or contract it is based on. So what does that mean? Well, when a bank issues an LC, suppose this bank it has issued an LC, okay, it is not responsible for checking the terms of sales. Bank is not responsible for checking the terms of sales that are the sale contract that are being followed. The bank only focus on the documents. That's the key point. I have already told you several times that bank has nothing to do with the terms of the sales contract. It has only thing to do with documents. That's all, right? The bank only focus on the document submitted under the LC. So that is all about credit versus contract. And the issuing bank is responsible, must discourage applicant from including contract or performa invoice detail in the LC. So no need to include the contract or performa invoice detail in the LC. Issuing bank must discourage. So this is one of the important part of regarding Article 4. Now why does this mean? What does this mean for buyer and seller? Right. So if you are a buyer or seller, remember LC is only about documents, not about the actual goods and services. If there is an issue with the goods delivered, the bank is not involved. That is something the buyer and seller need to handle separately through their contract. So suppose goods come in a bad situation, it is not as per the said terms. So bank does not has nothing to do with that. Bank only deal with the document. That in the article number 5 of the UCPDC, it explains that how it affects the way bank handle letter of credit when things don't go as planned in the transaction. So the first thing is that banks deal with the document. I've already told you that bank deals with the document, right, and not the actual goods or services. So let me explain. If a seller ships goods to a buyer, so suppose this is the seller and this is the buyer, and this seller ships goods to the buyer, right? So the bank will only examine those documents. Bank will examine those documents only, right? It won't inspect the goods. it won't inspect the goods or not, or confirm if they match the contract between the buyer and seller. So in this case, bank will only examine those documents. It has nothing to do with, bank has nothing to do with the goods, right? So this is the point. It has been explained in article 5 of the UCP 600. Now let's see what are some of the common issues. Now this is where things get tricky. Sometimes the buyer or the applicant refuses the document. It happens sometimes the buyer or applicant refuses the document, saying the goods don't match what was agreed upon in the pro forma invoice. In some cases, buyer even go to the court and get order to block the LC payment due to the contract dispute. So these is some of the common issues. Then the next is bank obligation. This question will be asked under Article 5. What is the bank obligation in such case? See, this type of case study will be asked. Suppose the LC has been issued and now applicant is refusing the document, saying it is claiming the goods do not match. So in this case, what is the obligation of the bank? Such type of question can be asked. There will be 4 options and you have to select the correct one. Try to understand. The bank obligation, even if buyer claim there has been breach of the contract, the bank is still obligated to pay. So the key word you have to remember is still obligated to pay. That means bank has to make the payment, right? So to whom the bank is obligated to pay? Obviously to the seller, because he is the exporter, he has exported the goods. So bank is obligated to pay the seller, and the condition is that the document should comply with the LC terms. So whatever document is it should comply with the LC terms and condition. This is one of the important condition. So even if there is a breach of the contract, that's what it has been explained. Even if there is a breach in the contract, bank must honor LC payment if the document comply with the LC term. Now the next pertinent question is, what happen when the court interfere? Right. See, sometimes court get involved by issuing a stay or injunction, right, to stop the bank from making the payment. So this can cause delay and put the whole transaction on hold. In such case, issuing bank has to wait for the court decision before proceeding. But remember, bank is not responsible for sorting out contract dispute. It can't use this dispute as an excuse to avoid payment if the documents are in order. So try to understand what I'm saying, that the bank can't use this dispute as an excuse to avoid payment if the documents are in order. That's the key point. So bank must wait for the legal reason before honoring payment, but should not use contract issue as an excuse to avoid payment. That is the issuing bank role. So we have seen what are the common issues. We have seen what is the bank obligation in such cases. We have seen what happen if the court interfere, and what is the issuing bank role in such cases when court interference is there. Can bank make excuse to of the contract issues to make payment? No. So now let's come to the next question, next point, that is a credit risk. Finally, the issue of credit risk. So even though the bank is required to make the payment to the seller, obviously the bank is required to make the payment to the seller. Bank will make payment to the seller, right? So it is still the buyer responsibility to pay the bank back. Who will pay the bank? Bank will pay the seller, but the buyer is solely responsible to pay the bank back. If the buyer refuses, the bank faces the challenge of recovering that payment, but this does not change the bank obligation to honor the LC. Yes, this is very good. This is a very important thing, that the bank is exposed to the credit risk. Why? Because bank has paid to the seller. Now buyer will pay the bank, but buyer is not paying the bank. Buyer refuses. So the bank faces the challenge of recovering that payment, but this don't change the bank obligation to honor the LC. Bank has to honor the LC if documents are in order. Now let's come to so we have covered important points of the Article 5 and the challenges bank face in LC transaction when dispute arises. So hopefully the concept of Article 5 is clear now. Now there is one more case study, okay, which is very important, which is related to the date of document. Let's go through it, right? So we were diving into case study about the date of document in letter of credit. If you have ever wondered how document date affect LC payment, you are in the right place. Let's go into it. So friends, let me discuss this particular case study. Let's go through the scenario. First thing is, there is a bank A. Okay, so this bank A, it issued an LC. So let me draw a timeline here so that it become very clear. So this bank A, it issued an LC dated 1 October 2021. The last shipment date was 15th October 2021. So shipment date last was 15th October 21. And what was the what are the negotiation date? So the negotiation date was 31st October 21. So the beneficiary presented the document to the bank B on 5th October. Try to understand. So this bank A, it issues the LC. It is the issuing bank which is present in the importer's country, and it issues the LC. The date of LC is 1st October 2021. The shipment date is the last shipment date was 15th October 2021, and the negotiation date was 31st October. So the beneficiary, the seller, presented the document to the bank B on 5th October. So if we talk about the B, it has presented the document. Which type of document? Obviously the export document, right? So he has made the export, and now he has all the documents, all the regarding the export of the consignment. So he submitted the document to its bank on 5th October 21, right? And with shipment occurring on, and when shipment occurred? Shipment occurred on 30th September 21. So it so this is the case. Okay, so let's look at the document detail. First thing is, first, what is the invoice detail? Invoice detail is 2/9/2021. Inspection certificate, analysis certificate, packing list, all dated 25th September 2021. So now let's go through the issues. So these are the documents. These things will be provided to you in the question. Now let's look at what is the main issue here. So main issue is that Bank A rejected the document, arguing that there was discrepancy because the document was dated before the LC was issued. You see, when LC was issued, 1st October 2021. When the document was dated, it was dated 25th September. You can see invoice date is 2nd September, and inspection certificate, all thing is 25th September. So the Bank A rejected the document, arguing that there is a discrepancy because the document were dated before the LC was issued. So was the rejection valid? Was it valid or not? Tell me. So now for that to answer, you have to understand the UCPDC article 4.1. See, it's just a question will be asked in case study, that you will be given a scenario when the document date is this one, that is the document date is 2 September 2021, and the LC issuing date is 1st October 2021. And now in this case you can easily see that the document date is prior to the LC issuing date. So is the document so and that's why this bank has rejected. So has the bank was the rejection valid? So now under article 14.1 of the UCPDC, document can be dated before LC date. Try to understand, this is very important. Document to be dated before LC date, but not after the expiry date for presentation. However, they cannot be dated after the LC expiry date for presentation. This means that as long as the documents are presented within the valid period and before the LC expire, the date on the document themselves don't have to be after the LC issuance date. What I'm saying, document can be dated before the LC date. So this issue that the document date is 25th September or 2nd September and the issuing date is 1st October, this is valid, okay? But they cannot be dated after the LC expiry date. You know, every LC has an expiry date. So the document cannot be dated after the expiry date for presentation. This means that as long as the document are presented within the valid period. What is the valid period? So suppose this is the LC issuing date, it can be issued before the LC issuing date but cannot be issued after the LC expiring period. So the date on the document themselves don't have to be. What is the conclusion? What is the conclusion that we raised from this particular case study? Let me just conclude. So we have seen that the document was presented before the expiry date of the LC. Right, so document was presented. So suppose this is the expiry date, okay, and the document was presented before the expiry date, right? Document was presented before the expiry date. Also, this was dated before the LC, and this is allowed under UCPDC. Two things: before the expiry date, the document must be presented, and it can be presented before the LC opening date. So the Bank A rejection was not in line with the UCPDC standard. Why? Because what the Bank A say? Because they say that since the document was presented before the LC date, before the LC issuing date, that's why I am rejecting. But UCPDC article 14.1 says that document can be presented before the LC issuing date, right? So that's why this Bank A rejection condition, the Bank A rejection reason is not valid, right? And what about the negotiating bank? What about the negotiating bank? Tell me. So the negotiating bank acted correctly by accepting the document, right? You see, it is written here that the negotiating bank accepted the document, right? And it is correct in accepting the document, because the last negotiation done was 31st 10 2021. So negotiating bank was correct in accepting the document. There were no discrepancy. So we have seen how document date and LC rule work together to ensure a smooth transaction. So the key point you have to keep in mind is that, first thing first, that LC issuing date. Try to understand what I'm saying. This is very important. So suppose this is the LC issuing date, right? This is the LC issuing date, and this is the LC expiry date, right? So the document presentation date, that means document date can lie anywhere from here to here, but it cannot lie beyond this. Okay, up to the LC expiry date, the document date can lie anywhere. Okay, it can be before the LC issuing date also, no issue, right? But it should not be after the LC expiry date. That's the key point which we have covered in this particular case study. Is it clear now? Okay, very good. Now let's come to the next case study, that is regarding the partial shipment. Okay, so basically we will study about partial shipment, how it impact letter of credit. If you have ever had question about how partial shipment are handled under the LC, this particular slide is for you. So let's understand the scenario first. What is going on? Let's understand it. So an LC was issued for shipment of 1000 cartoon. Okay, and this 1000 cartoon possesses 15,000 shirts from Chennai to Dubai. Okay, from Chennai to Dubai there is a shipment of 1000 cartoon, and it possessed 15,000 shirts, right? The LC clearly stated that partial shipment is not allowed. It is clearly written in LC that partial shipment is not allowed. However, the beneficiary, who is beneficiary? You know, the beneficiary is the seller, or you can call it exporter, right? So however, the beneficiary shipped, see how he shipped, try to understand. He shipped 500 cartoon on 15th May 2021 and 500 cartoon on 18th May 2021. So these two way he has shipped the cartoon. So two bill of lading were issued. There were two bill of lading issued. The first bill of lading was dated 15th May 2021 and it was issued for 500 cartoons, and the second bill of lading was dated 19/5/2021 for 500 cartoons. You know what is bill of lading? We have already covered all this thing in the previous session, right? So both the consignment were shipped on the same vessel leaving on 21/5/2021, 21 May 2021, right? So now let's go through the issues. What is the main issue? So have you understood the question properly? So 1000 cartoon were there having 15,000 shirts from Chennai to Dubai. The beneficiary, that means the exporter, or we can say the exporter, has shipped 500 cartoon on 15th May and 500 cartoon on 18th May. Shipping company has issued two bill of lading. First was dated 17th May and second was dated 19th May. Both consignments shipped on the same vessel leaving on 21st May. Now the issue is that the issuing bank rejected the document, arguing that two bill of lading represented a partial shipment which was not allowed under the LC term, right? Because what is the main point that issuing bank was telling, that there are two bill of lading and this constitute partial shipment and this is not prohibited under the LC. Now was the rejection justified? This is a very good question, that whether the rejection by the issuing bank is justified or not. So to solve this question, you have to understand the UCP article 31. See, what does this article say? That if multiple transport document cover goods shipped on the same means of transport and on the same journey. So the key point here is same means of transport and the same journey. It is not considered a partial shipment, even if the document have a different shipment date. You can see the document are having different shipment date, right? Okay, no, the shipment date is same. Okay, so what it's saying, that if there are multiple transport document, like you can see, there is a two transport document, 500 cartoon. Okay, they shipped on the same means of transport, that is on same vessel. Okay, the means of transport is same, and also the journey is also same. So it is not considered a partial shipment. Okay, even if the document are having different shipment date, right? So this is what it has been said here. So in this particular case, if we conclude, what we see that the goods were shipped on the same vessel. You can see written here that the transportation means is same and on the same journey, right? Despite the different date on bill of lading, you can see bill of lading date is different. That means shipment date are different, right? So according to the UCP article 31, these two things you have to see. First thing, whether the journey is same or not, whether the transport means is same or not, and you have to see whether the shipment date is different. So you can see according to the article 31, the issuing bank rejection was incorrect. The bank must honor the document since the shipment was made on the same vessel and the same journey. So bank has to honor the document. The issuing bank rejection is not justified because he says that this is a partial shipment, so he cannot, and it is not, it is written here partial shipment is not allowed, but this case is not partial shipment. So see what UCP article 31 says, that it says that if the means of transport is same, if the date or if the journey is same, and whether if the date of shipment is different, it does not matter. It is not considered a partial shipment. That's the point. Remember, there are three conditions which you have to see. Now let's come to the I hope this clear of how partial shipment are handled. If you really enjoy this breakdown, please give a thumbs up and subscribe for more financial insight and trade finance tip. And friends, what I'm saying, that if you want such type of case study in a quiz format, in MCQs format, and if you want videos of all such case studies from each and every unit, okay, so you can enroll in our BFM comprehensive plan. For more detail, you can WhatsApp me on this particular number. Okay, I will provide you detail how to access the BFM comprehensive plan and more detail regarding it. Now let's jump over to the next case study, which is regarding the notice of dishonor. So we are going to dive into a case study focusing on notice of dishonor in letter of credit. If you have ever wondered how bank handled dishonor document, this slide will give you a clear picture. Let's get started. So here is the situation we are exploring. This is the timeline of the event. See, what is the event? First thing is LC issuing bank received document. So document received. When document received? It was received on 7th March 2021. That is Tuesday. Okay, and now the bank take 2 days. So the 2 days was taken by bank to examine the document and referred them to applicant on 9th March 21 to applicant, right? So now this is the timeline of event, that it was document was first received on 7th March, and secondly it was referred to the applicant on 9th March. Okay, so these two things we have covered here. Now let's look at the situation. So first of all, you have to understand what is the meaning of notice of dishonor, right? Okay, before that I think I missed something. Okay, so here you can see applicant reported discrepancies. One thing I am saying, that further what happened, that on 14th March the applicant reported discrepancies. So applicant says that there is some discrepancy in the document. And what was the discrepancy? This was Tuesday. This was again Tuesday. The discrepancy was that bill of lading was missing the onboard stamp and initial of the shipping company. So what after the applicant rejected it, okay, the issuing bank sent a swift rejection message to the negotiating bank on 15th March 21. So to the negotiating bank, it has sent a swift rejection message. You know what is the negotiating bank? It is in the exporter country, right? So there was no mark on the onboard stamp on the bill of lading. So what was the negotiating bank response? So one more thing I want to explain to you is regarding the what is the meaning of LC dishonoring. So in LC transaction, this notice of dishonoring, this word is quite common, notice of dishonor. So what does it mean? It is crucial for managing discrepancies and ensuring compliance with the LC term. So bank must carefully examine the document to ensure they match the LC term. In this case, bank take 2 days to review the document, and after referral to the applicant, once the bank had examined the document, they referred them to the applicant. And now after that examining document, the bank examination period directly impact how quickly discrepancies are addressed. Okay. So now what does negotiating bank respond? It responded that the note of rejection and discrepancy was not given within 5 banking days 5 banking day, what is saying, just let me know, demanding reimbursement as per the LC term. So he rejected. That the rejection reason is that it was not given within 5 banking days, okay, as per the LC term. Now whether the rejection was justifiable or not, to answer this question you have to go through UCP article 16D. It says that, what does this article says? This article says that, okay, so UCP article 16 requires that any refusal or any notice of discrepancy must be communicated by the end of the 5th banking day from when the document was presented. So suppose the document was presented, what I am saying, try to understand. So suppose this is the document presentation date, okay, so this article says that within the 5 banking day, this notice of rejection at the evening of, by the closing of the 5th banking day, the refusal and discrepancy notice must be given. So in this case what is happening, the issuing bank sent message on 15th March, okay, so let's see what is happening here. It sent notice on 15th March 2021, okay, so this was valid, okay, and okay, the notice was sent on 15th March, right? And before that, on 7th March, LC issuing bank received document. So you can see this 7th March it received document. This was Tuesday, okay. Then 8th and 9th March it took the bank took 2 days, right, to examine. So this was Wednesday, this was Thursday. So 2 days it has taken now. Now on 10 it was Friday. What happened on Friday? And after 9th it has sent the document to the applicant. Okay, so this become 3 days. This Friday become 3 days. You know, 11th and 12th was Saturday and Sunday, and this is and 13th March was Holi, which was holiday. See, these 3 things will be given to you in the question. 11th was Saturday, 12th was Sunday, and 13th was Holi festival, because of which bank were closed. So these 3 days were non-banking days. So after that come 14th and then 15th. So this 15th is the 5th day, right? And at the end of the 5th day, the issuing bank has sent message to the negotiating bank. So the justification of the negotiation bank that it should be sent within 5 days is wrong, because it has already been sent on the 5th banking day. Here the key word is banking day, not the day. Banking day means the day on which bank are open. You can see it here that these 3 day banks are closed, and that's why they are not counted toward the banking days. So 8, 9, 10, 14 and 15, these are 5 days. Okay, so the examination time and the discrepancy notice. So in this case, issuing bank notice of rejection was valid and in compliance. They met the requirement by sending the notice within 5 banking day, accounting for non-banking day. So hopefully this concept is also clear, that how to deal with the cases of timing of documents. Now let's come to the next case study that we have regarding the insurance requirement. See, we will dive into case study about insurance requirement. Let's see the scenario. So the first thing is LC requirement. What does the requirement say? That the insurance must cover 110% of the invoice value and be valid from warehouse to warehouse. First thing, it must cover 110% of that invoice value and it must be valid from warehouse to warehouse. Let's see the document detail. The invoice amount was $17,920. The insurance amount was $20,000. Transport document was multimodal. So it means it is a combined bill of lading, which was dated 15th March 2021. The insurance date was 17th March 2021. Now the key points. We have to see the key points from the article number 28. So true thing, transport document date is how much? 15th March 21, and the insurance date is how much? 17th March 21, right? These two things we have to remember. Now let's move on to the article number 28 of UCP article number 28. Let's see this particular article. So first thing is regarding the insurance coverage. So what does it say regarding the insurance coverage? that if the LC require insurance but does not specify the amount, the insurance should cover at least 110% of the invoice value. So if the LC require insurance and it does not specify the amount, suppose there is no amount specified that this should be the amount of insurance, nothing is specified, then it should be at least 110% of the invoice value. And the second thing is that insurance policy must not be dated prior to the date of transport document. You can see it here that the transport document date is 15th March and the insurance date is 17th March. This is possible, but it can't be possible that the insurance date is 15th March and the transport document date is 17th March. No, this is not possible. That's what it is saying, that the insurance date should be beyond the transport document date. First transport will happen and then after insurance, right? On or after the date of transport document. So these two things we have to keep in mind. Now let's come to this particular question, analyzing the document. So now can you tell me what is the insurance amount? So insurance amount, you can see it is how much? $20,000, right? And what is the LC invoice amount? That is 17,920. If you calculate the 11%, 110%, see 100% is 17,920 and 10% is 1792, and if you add both of them, you will get how much you will get? You will get 19712, right? So this is 110% of the invoice value. And you can see the LC amount is 20,000, which is larger than the 110% of the invoice value. So it is in confirmation with the first condition of the UCP article 28, that the LC insurance amount should be larger than 110% of the invoice amount. So the first condition is valid here, right? This is in line with the UCP article 28. Now the second condition is that the LC insurance date should be after the transport date of the transport document date, and you can see the transport document date is 15th March and the insurance date is 17th March. So it clearly shows that this condition is also in line with the condition laid out in the article number 28. So what we conclude, that the insurance document meets the LC requirement, right? This insurance document meets the LC requirement. It covers more than 110% of the invoice amount and it is dated after the transport document. So the insurance document are compliant with the LC terms and UCP article 28. So that is all for this particular case study. Hopefully everything is clear now. Okay, now let's see one more case study. So friends, if you really think that this video gives you insight into all the case study, it make you clear your concept, please hit the like button. Please share this video with other CIB aspirant so that they also get access to such type of content which can be freely available. Now let's see one important case study. This is regarding the bank deal is document not in good. I think we have covered it already. So let's go through it once more. What is the situation here? The importer claimed that goods were shipped on 5th April. Right, goods have been shipped on 5th April, while the on-board bill of lading is dated 31st March, right? And the LC allowed shipment before 1st April, right? LC allowed shipment before 1st April. Now, how the bank will handle this situation? Well, dealing with LC transaction, when dealing with LC transaction, bank focus on the document and not the actual good. Here is how this play out, right? So, Article 14A, let's go through this article, just wait. Article 14A, what does it say? That is what I am going to discuss. Article 14A. So see this article 14A, what does it say? That the bank decisions are based on compliance of document with the terms of LC. They do not consider the actual shipment date. And Article 5 say that the bank deal with the document, not the actual goods and services. And Article 34 says that bank are not responsible for falsified document. They will honor the document as long as they comply with the LC term. So the conclusion is that bank stance is correct. The bank must honor the document as presented as they are compliant with the LC term. Discrepancies related to the actual shipment date do not impact the bank responsibility to honor the LC. So this is how it plays into picture, it comes into picture. Now let's discuss one more case study which is regarding the LC issuing bank and advising bank responsibility. See, let's see the situation. The importer supplier did not receive the LC because the advising bank failed to advise it. Obviously, when advising bank will not advise the LC, so the importer supplier will not receive the LC, Okay, and as a result, the supplier is not demanding an increase in price. The supplier now demands, since he did not receive the goods, the supplier is now because he did not receive the LC, so he is demanding increase in price by USD 1000 due to the delay. The importer claims that opening bank, the bank that issued the LC, is responsible for this delay and the associated loss. So now, how the responsibility are managed? So here are some important articles. First comes article number 9, which says that if the advising bank failed to advise the LC, it must inform the LC opening bank immediately. I think we have covered it already. If the advising bank it has not advised the LC, so it should be communicating the same message to the issuing bank. Right, this ensures that the opening bank is aware of any issues with the advising bank performance. Now comes article number 37. What does it say? Article number 37 clarify that the opening bank is not responsible for the advising bank failure. Opening bank has nothing to do. Advising bank failure is there because it has not informed the LC opening bank immediately, so opening bank is not responsible. So article clarify that the opening bank is not responsible for the advising bank failure, even if it is selected that bank. The opening bank liability does not extend to the advising bank performance. So now, what is the conclusion? The conclusion is that opening bank is not liable for the advising bank failure to perform its duty. The responsibility for the failure to advise the LC lie with the advising bank, not the opening bank. Okay, so this is how you should solve all the important case study, right? And one more case study is there regarding the issuance of insurance policy. Okay, let's see this particular question. An LC was issued for 20,000, 2 lakh US dollar. 2 lakh US dollar LC was issued, and which required insurance covering all risk. The insurance policy submitted was also for USD 2 lakh dollar, right? For USD 2 lakh dollar, the insurance policy was submitted, and it was dated 29th September 2021. The shipment date was 27th September 2021, and the policy covered was institute cargo clauses. Now, how to handle insurance policy document? According to the article 28E of the UCP 600, it says that insurance policy dated after the shipment date is acceptable. That is the transport date, that is shipment date, and insurance date after shipment date is acceptable. So as long as it covered from at least the shipment date. So in this case, the policy date is how much? 29, and the shipment date is how much? 27. So this is valid. Okay, the policy dated 29/9/22 is valid. Now, what is regarding the coverage amount? So if we talk about the coverage amount, this comes under article 28F2. So it required that the insurance cover should be at least 110%, right? So if the LC does not specify the requirement, it should be at least the insurance coverage should be at least 110% of the invoice amount. What is the invoice amount here? Invoice amount here is $2 lakh. Okay, and the policy is for 2 lakh. The LC required covering the LC. This is appropriate. Okay, and what about the type of insurance? The article 28G. Article 28G states that clearly specify the type of insurance required. In this case, the policy cover institute cargo clause, which meet all the requirements. So the insurance policy is acceptable, right? In this case, the insurance policy is acceptable. This is case study number 8. Now, case study number 9 is regarding the banking days. Okay, so a document for LC of euro 1,25,000 was submitted on 2nd May. The LC last date for submission was 30th April, and the 30th April and 1st May was holiday. So now, according to the article 29A, so what will happen in this case? See, document was submitted on 2nd May for this much. LC last date for submission was 30th April, and 30th April and 1st May were holiday, and it has been submitted on 2 May. So let's come to the article number 29A of the UCP 600. What does this article say? This article says that if the last day for presentation fall on holiday or non-banking day, document can be presented on the next working day. So in this case, what is the next working day after 30 May? It is not 1st May, it is 2nd May. However, Article 29A also specifies if the day like Saturday is a working day for the bank, the last day for presentation is considered as that working day. So, if 30th April was a Saturday and if the bank were open, documents would have been presented on or before 30th April. So, since 13th April and month May were holiday, the presentation on 2nd May would typically be valid. But if 30th April was a working day for the bank, presenting document on 2nd May would be considered after the expiry of the LC. So friends, these are the things which we have covered in this particular lecture. We have covered 10 important case studies. Now let's talk about one important case study which is given in your book. So we are discussing a case study about permissible transaction for an NRI. If you are NRI, this particular information will be very important, useful. So imagine you are an NRI, name X. So suppose you are an NRI and your name is X with some financial transaction in India. You want to know if these transactions are allowed and how to handle them. Here is list of what X is dealing with. First thing is property inherited and sold for rupees 45 lakh. So if you have inherited a property and sold it for 45 lakh, you are in a luck. The transaction is permissible and the proceed can be credited to your NRO account, that is non-resident ordinary account. Remember it. This thing you have to keep in mind, that whatever property you have inherited and you have sold for 45 lakh, the amount you get, okay, this first of all this transaction is permissible and the amount, the proceed can be credited to your non-resident ordinary account because you are an NRI. And we have already discussed that whatever proceed you are getting from India, that will be deposited in your NRO account, right? Now the next thing is monthly rent of 0.75 lakh. So if you are earning monthly rent of 0.75 lakh, this income can also be credited to your NRO account. So rent collection are straightforward and these are also allowed. The next thing is FD deposit matured for rupees 4 lakh. So suppose you have an FD, you got a fixed deposit that just matured and bought in rupees 4 lakh. No worry, you can credit this amount to your NRO account without any issue. So this can also be credited to an NRO account. See, this type of case studies are asked whether property inherited amount involved can be credited to an NRO account. Yes, it is credited. Whether monthly rent of 0.75 lakh can be credited to an NRO account. Yes, it is viable. And last is FD matured for rupees 4 lakh. Can that also be credited? Obviously, that can also be credited. Now the provident fund due of rupees 28 lakh. So if you have a provident fund due totaling 28 lakh, this can also be credited to your NRO account. It is a permissible transaction. So you can manage your PF saving conveniently. And the last is loan repayment of 1.5 lakh. Try to understand this. Very, very important. Now here is an important point. If you are making a loan repayment of 1.5 lakh, you cannot do this in cash. It must be routed through the banking channel. So this is not permissible in cash. It must be routed through the banking channel. So make sure all loan payment are done by a bank transfer. So the good news is that all these transactions can be credited to your NRO account, whether property inherited, monthly rent, FD mature, PF dues of 28 lakh. Right. So when I say provident fund, if you have provident fund due totaling 28 lakh, this can also be credited to your NRO account. So all these things can be credited to your NRO account. From there, you can repatriate the money abroad, but there is a limit. I have just discussed in the last lecture that you cannot repatriate the entire amount from your NRO account, right? The amount that you can repatriate is limit up to $1 million in a financial year, okay? And you will need to get approval from the income tax department before doing so, right? So after obtaining approval from the income tax department, you can repatriate overall limit up to $1 million in a financial year. That's true from NRO account. So remember, the proceed from all these transactions can be credited to the NRO account, but the entire amount cannot be repatriated back to the other country, foreign country. The limit has been kept, that is $1 million. But to obtain that limit, you have to seek permission from income tax department. You have to seek approval from income tax department. That's the point. So let's talk about the next case study. So we are continuing our discussion on the permissible transaction for NRI using a case study example. We will look at how different type of income and transaction can be managed by NRI and the rule that apply.
In our previous slide, we introduced a case study involving an NRI whose name was X, who had several type of income and transaction. In this slide, we will talk about the solution and how this transaction can be handled legally and efficiently. So first thing is property sale proceed, which was the first case. So first up, X sold an inherited property for rupees 45 lakh. This is a permissible transaction. The proceeds from this sale can be credited to X NRO account. Additionally, if X want to repatriate this money abroad, up to $1 million per financial year can be repatriated, provided X get approval from the income tax department. Next is rent received. X earned a monthly rent of 0.75 lakh. This rental income is also permitted to be credited to the NRO account. So X can receive rent payment without any issue. Next is matured fixed deposit. So what about the fixed deposit that matured for rupees 4 lakh? Since this FD were opened with rupee resource, it is perfectly fine to credit the proceed from the maturity to the NRO account. This means that X can easily access the money through the NRO account. The next thing is provident fund dues. So X has also PF dues which total amount 28 lakh. So these dues are legitimate and permissible to be credited to the NRO account. Next is loan repayment. Let's talk about loan repayment. If X need to repay a loan, it is permissible to do so from the balance in the NRO account. This means X can use the fund in the NRO account to handle loan repayment, making it easier to manage the debt. So all the transaction in this case study can be credited to the NRO account, which act like go through the case study of Jade. So here one case study is given in your book regarding Mr. Jade, who had recently become an NRI. We will look at how Jade should manage his existing financial account in India. This will give you a clear idea of what need to be done to stay compliant with the regulation. The first thing that Jade need to do is to redesignate. So what happening? Jade who has become NRI. Jade has become NRI. The first thing he will do that he will designate his resident saving bank account as NRO account, as we have already discussed that his resident saving account should be designated as NRO account. This change ensures that Jade account status align with his new NRI status. Right. So C, account status should align with NRI status. That is the key point. I am already talking about this thing several times. Remember, holding a resident saving account as an NRI is not permitted under Indian regulation. Next thing is resident joint account. So suppose Jade also hold a joint account with his wife. In this case, the joint account should be converted to an NRO account with former or survivor instruction. Right. So this joint account should be converted to an NRO account with former or survivor instruction. With Jade should be listed as a former, his wife should be listed as the survivor. This setup ensures that his wife will have seamless access to the account if something happened to Jade. So we are seeing that once a person status changes, he become NRI, how his existing account changes. So his resident saving account should be converted to an NRO account. Regarding his housing loan, right? So this particular person Jade also hold and has an housing loan that needs to be updated to reflect his NRO status. So the bank should be notified of the Jade change in his residential status. Any rental income from the property should be credited directly to the Jade NRO account. This is a straightforward way to maintain rental income and comply with the foreign exchange regulation. Right. So the loan should be updated to reflect his NRO status, noting Jade NRI status, and recurring deposit account. So the Jade should redesignate his existing recurring deposit as a RD NRO account. This change allows Jade to continue earning interest on his recurring deposit while ensuring that account complies with NRI regulation. And finally comes Demat account. So lastly, Jade's Demat account should be updated to show that account holder is now an NRI. This will help in managing investment in shares and securities while following the regulatory guidelines applicable to NRI. So you can see we have seen that once a person become NRI, what happens to his resident saving account, what happens to his resident joint account, what happens to the housing loan, what happens to the RD account, and finally what happens to the Demat account. All these things we have. Who has decided to return to India? Right now, A has two type of account. The first account is NRO account, which is non-resident ordinary account, with a 12 lakh balance. And second account he have is NRE account, that is non-resident external account, with a balance of 72 lakh. So what should A do with this account when coming back to India? Let's break it down. So first up, let's talk about the NRO account. Right. First of all, let's talk about the NRO account. This is quite simple. NRO account can be converted back to the regular resident saving account. So it can be converted into regular resident saving account. No big changes. Just makes you to update the status with the bank. So NRO account will be converted to resident saving bank account, right? And now let's talk about the NRE account. So here A has few options. The money in the NRE account can be converted into something called RFC account, which we have already discussed. So NRE account money can be converted to RFC account, right? So what is RFC? Resident foreign currency account. This can be done either partially or it can be done completely. It can be done partially or it can be done completely, right? So depending on how much of the fund A want to keep in the foreign currency, A want how much of the fund in foreign currency depends. So this NRE into RFC conversion can be done partially or completely. So here are two type of RFC account. The first is saving account and the second is fixed deposit account. So the saving account work just like your regular bank account, while the fixed deposit option let you lock in your money for a specific period to earn interest. So if let's talk about if A has an NRE fixed deposit, those can also be converted into RFC account once they mature. So option to convert mature NRE fixed deposit account into RFC account. The same goes for FCNRB account. I think you know what is FCNRB, foreign currency non-resident. And this FCNRB is always in the form of term deposit, right? We have already discussed maturity 1 to 5 years. So this FCNRB can also be converted to RFC account. Either it is saving account or fixed deposit account, fully or partially. Basically the idea is to give A the flexibility to keep the money in foreign currency or to convert it into Indian rupees based on what makes the most sense. So that's the basic idea. When I say resident foreign currency account, so obviously it means what? The currency is in foreign currency only, right? The currency has not been changed. It is not in Indian rupees. So it basically idea is to give the flexibility to this NRI to keep the money in foreign currency or it converted into Indian rupees based on what makes the most sense. So what about the joint account, right? So what about suppose this particular NRI was having joint account. So A can either continue holding the account with their spouse as the first applicant or switch it up so that A become the primary account holder. So he has the two options that he can either continue with the wife as the first applicant or changes the first applicant to the returning NRI. Now last but not the least, if A has any mutual fund, the money from those can be transferred directly to the resident saving account or an RFC account once they mature. So the mutual fund proceed can be credited to the resident saving account. So suppose he was having an NRO account which has been converted to resident saving account. So that mutual fund proceed will be credited to this particular account. And suppose he was having an RE account, right? And that particular NRE account has been converted to RFC account once he has returned to India. So mutual fund proceed can also be credited to this particular RFC account. So this gives A the flexibility and option to how to handle investment proceed. So there you have it. There are some simple solution for NRI like A के लिए जिसको 16 जून 2021 को डिस्काउंट किया गया. ठीक है, देखिए ऐसा समझिए कि ये 16 जून का है बात. ठीक है, 16 जून 21 को क्या किया गया? डिस्काउंट किया गया. तो आप बिल डिस्काउंटिंग समझते होंगे, राइट? तो इस एक्सपोर्ट बिल को डिस्काउंट किया गया अगेंस्ट अ बिल ऑफ ये 0.2 मिलियन यूरो है. ठीक है, पाउंड है, सॉरी. तो आपने इसे डिस्काउंट किया 0.9 मिलियन पाउंड पे और इसका मैच्योरिटी कब है? 18 सितंबर को है. तो 18 सितंबर को ये मैच्योरिटी है. डिस्काउंटिंग समझते हैं ना? डिस्काउंटिंग का मतलब ये हुआ कि एक कस्टमर आपके पास आया बिल लेकर, वो आपको बोला सॉरी, तो वो आपको बोला कि अभी मुझे सख्त पैसा की आवश्यकता है, तुरंत पैसे की आवश्यकता है, तो आप ये बिल रख लीजिए और मुझे इस बिल के पैसे अमाउंट मुझे दे दीजिए, और जो भी आपका चार्जेस वगैरह है वो काट के, और डिस्काउंट, इसी को डिस्काउंटिंग कहते हैं, ठीक है। तो अब देखिए 16 जून 2021 को आपके पास आया, आपने डिस्काउंट किया बिल को, और बिल कितना का था, $0.2 मिलियन का था, 0.2 मिलियन पाउंड का था। तो आपने उसे 0.9 मिलियन पाउंड में डिस्काउंट किया, और मैच्योरिटी मतलब इतना में डिस्काउंटिंग किया, और मैच्योरिटी कब 18 सितंबर 2021 का। लेकिन 18 सितंबर को क्या हुआ कि बिल डिसऑनर हो गया। अब डिसऑनर तो आप जानते ही होंगे, कैंसिल हो जाना, डिसऑनर को कहते हैं, डिसऑनर मतलब कि कैंसिल हो जाना होता है। तो उस दिन का एक्सचेंज रेट आपको दिया हुआ है 1 पाउंड बराबर इतना रुपीस। हाउ मच अमाउंट इज टू बी रिकवर्ड फ्रॉम द कस्टमर फॉर सच डिसऑनर इफ चार्जेस फॉर डिसऑनर आर इतना एंड आरबीआई इंटरेस्ट रेट इज 8%। तो देखिए आपने 0.2 मिलियन का बिल को 0.19 मिलियन में डिस्काउंट किया था पहले, ठीक है, और फिर 18 सितंबर को ये डिसऑनर हो गया। एक तरह समझिए कि कैंसिलेशन वाला प्रॉब्लम है, दिस इज अ प्रॉब्लम ऑफ कैंसिलेशन ऑफ बिल, ठीक है। और आपको डिसऑनर का चार्ज दिया हुआ है और आरबीआई का इंटरेस्ट रेट दिया हुआ है 8% का, ठीक है। तो यहां से यहां तक तो आप इंटरेस्ट रेट तो लेंगे ही ना, राइट, तो इंटरेस्ट तो आप लेंगे ही, तो वो इंटरेस्ट रेट एक अलग पोर्शन होगा, और जो चार्जेस है डिसऑनर का वो एक अलग पोर्शन होगा। तो ये दोनों को ऐड करके और फिर जो टोटल अमाउंट है उसको ऐड करेंगे, तब हमें क्या मिलेगा, टोटल अमाउंट मिलेगा। अब यहाँ पे समझने वाली बात ये है कि मैं आपको समझाता हूँ। देखिए डिस्काउंटिंग ऑफ बिल को डिस्काउंट किया गया इतना के लिए। अब देखिए यहाँ पे आपको जो रेट दिया हुआ है, थोड़ा इसको ध्यान से देखिए कि उस दिन का रेट क्या था, इसमें से कौन सा रेट लिया जाए, बाइंग रेट लिया जाए या सेलिंग रेट लिया जाए। तो क्वेश्चन में ही आपको आंसर मिल जाएगा। यहाँ पे कैसा बिल लिखा हुआ, एक्सपोर्ट बिल, और एक्सपोर्ट बिल को आपको पता है कि बाइंग रेट लगता है, लेकिन यहाँ पे हमारा क्या हो रहा है, डिसऑनर हो रहा है, मतलब कि कैंसिलेशन का केस है। और आपको पता होगा कि कैंसिलेशन के केस में यदि हमारा बाइंग रहता है तो वहां पे हम लोग सेलिंग रेट लेते हैं, और यदि हमारा सेलिंग रहता है तो वहां पे हम लोग बाइंग रेट लेते हैं, अपोजिट लेते हैं। तो इस केस में हमारा बाइंग हो रहा है तो हम लोग क्या लेंगे, सेलिंग रेट लेंगे, यानी जो हम लोग एक्सचेंज रेट को लेंगे वो 84.22 को लेंगे। ये बातें समझ में आई आपको? पहला पॉइंट यही चीज ध्यान रखना है कि कौन सा रेट लिया जाए, समझे। तो 1 पाउंड बराबर 84.228 आप लेंगे। तो आपको बेसिकली डिस्काउंटिंग कितना का करना है, 0.19 का करना है ना। तो 0.19 को आप क्या करेंगे, एक्चुअली आपको रुपीस में कन्वर्ट करना है, इसीलिए हम लोग क्या करेंगे कि 0.19 को 84.228 से मल्टीप्लाई कर देंगे, ठीक है। तो मिलियन है तो मिलियन को आपको रुपीस में लिखना पड़ेगा। मिलियन बेसिकली 10 लाख होता है, और इसको 84.228 इसको आप सॉल्व कीजिए तो आपको मिलेगा आई थिंक इट इज़ 1,60,33,320। तो ये आपको मिलेगा। अच्छा, अब दूसरा, एक तो ये कंपोनेंट हो गया हमारा, हमने एक्सचेंज रेट निकाल लिया क्या उस पार्टिकुलर दिन में हमारा जो 0.19 मिलियन डॉलर था, बिलियन डॉलर था, मिलियन रुपीज़ था, उसका रुपीज़ में क्या वैल्यू है। अब उसके बाद हमारा आता है डिसऑनर चार्ज कैलकुलेशन। तो रेट कितना दिया हुआ है, 0.025। तो आपको इसका 0.025 निकालना पड़ेगा, यानी कि 16,00,33,20 का 25 डिवाइडेड बाई 1000 इंटू 100। तो ये रेट आपको निकालना पड़ेगा। तो ये आपको मिलेगा 4000 के आसपास। आप इसे कैलकुलेट कीजिए, यू विल गेट नियर अबाउट 4000.83। तीसरा पॉइंट आता है हमारा इंटरेस्ट कैलकुलेशन। तो इंटरेस्ट में सबसे पहले आप डेज निकालेंगे ना, तो आपको देखिए ये बिल कब बना था, 16 जुलाई को। तो जुलाई में आपका कितना दिन हो गया, जुलाई में 16 दिन हो गया, 16 to 31। उसके बाद अगस्त में कितना दिन हो गया, अगस्त में 31 डेज हो गया। फिर सितंबर में कितना दिन हो गया, 18 दिन हो गया। इसको ऐड कीजिए, 8 1 9 9 6 15, और फिर 3 1 4 1 5 1 6 65, यानी 65 दिन होगा आपका। तो 65 डेज का इंटरेस्ट लगेगा, और रेट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट दिया हुआ है 8%। तो इंटरेस्ट का फॉर्मूला आपको पता ही है, क्या होता है फॉर्मूला, P इंटू R इंटू T अपॉन 100। P कितना लेंगे हम लोग, ये P लेंगे 16,00,33,20। आर क्या लेंगे, आर हमें 8% दिया हुआ है। टी क्या लेंगे, 65 डे लेंगे, इसको 365 से डिवाइड कर देंगे और बाय 100 कर लेंगे। तो इसको आप सॉल्व करेंगे ना, इंटरेस्ट कैलकुलेशन, प्लीज सॉल्व दिस क्वेश्चन, यू विल गेट 2,27,992 रुपया ब्याज लगेगा। मोबाइल पे या वेब पे, जैसा आपको सुविधा हो, लैपटॉप पे भी अवेल कर सकते हैं, टेस्ट दे सकते हैं। तो इस प्रकार से आप देख सकते हैं कि अगला 11 अगस्त को आपका यूनिट 3 यूनिट 4 का टेस्ट होगा, 18 अगस्त को आपका यूनिट 5 यूनिट 6 का टेस्ट होगा। और जैसे हमारा एक मॉड्यूल कंप्लीट होगा तो मैं आपको 100 क्वेश्चन का एक मॉड्यूल वाइज यूनिट टेस्ट करवाऊंगा, एक मॉड्यूल वाइज मॉक टेस्ट करवाऊंगा, जिसमें 100 क्वेश्चन होंगे और प्रॉपर आपको सॉल्यूशन मिलेगा पीडीएफ फॉर्मेट में और वीडियो फॉर्मेट में। इसी प्रकार से आप देख सकते हैं कि मॉड्यूल बी का सिमिलर फॉर्मेट रहेगा हमारा, मॉड्यूल सी का रहेगा और फिर मॉड्यूल डी का रहेगा। और फाइनली जब हमारा एग्जामिनेशन के बहुत ही कम समय बचे रह जाएंगे तो हम लोग फुल लेंथ मॉक टेस्ट करेंगे। प्रत्येक फुल लेंथ मॉक टेस्ट में हमारा क्या रहेगा, 1 से लेकर 4 यूनिट्स रहेगा। देखिए
कुछ लोग होंगे जो केवल जिन्हें केवल मॉक टेस्ट ही चाहिए, तो बिल्कुल सही है, मॉक टेस्ट का भी हमारे पास प्लान है। एक मॉक टेस्ट का कॉस्ट मैं आपको बता देता हूँ, ₹200 मात्र कॉस्ट है इस मॉक टेस्ट का। इस प्रकार से आपको कुल मिलाकर आप देख सकते हैं कि टोटल यहाँ पे देख सकते हैं 15 यूनिट वाइज मॉक टेस्ट है, 4 फुल लेंथ मॉक टेस्ट है, 4 मॉड्यूल वाइज मॉक टेस्ट है, और डेली क्विज़ तो 100 के ऊपर रहेंगे, वो मैं आपको डेली प्रोवाइड करूंगा एक टेलीग्राम ग्रुप के माध्यम से। तो फ्रेंड्स ये तो BFM का बात रहा। जो हमारे मेंटरशिप प्रोग्राम में जुड़ेंगे उनको केवल मॉक टेस्ट तो मिलेगा ही मिलेगा, उसके साथ साथ दोस्तों उनको यूनिट वाइज जो वीडियोस हैं, जो मैं आपको बोला ना कि डेली बेसिस पे मैं आपको पेज बताऊंगा और पेज के बेसिस पे आपको उससे रिलेटेड कंटेंट प्रोवाइड करूंगा कि हाँ ये शॉर्ट नोट्स है इसका, ये इसका वीडियोस है, तो वो आपको मिलेगा। और फाइनली मैं आपको कैप्सूल कोर्स भी इसके अंदर प्रोवाइड करूंगा मेंटरशिप प्रोग्राम के अंदर। तो बेसिकली मेंटरशिप प्रोग्राम के अंदर आपको क्या मिल रहा है, PDF मिल रहा है, प्लस वीडियोस मिल रहा है, और प्लस आपको मॉक मिल रहा है, और प्लस कैप्सूल कंटेंट मिल रहा है। जो हमारा व्हाट टू स्टडी PDF होता है, कैप्सूल कंटेंट होता है, यानी ये चारों चीज का फायदा आपको मिल रहा है हमारे मेंटरशिप प्रोग्राम के अंदर। और फ्रेंड्स मेंटरशिप प्रोग्राम का मैं आपको कॉस्ट बता देता हूँ, वो है मात्र ₹400। तो फ्रेंड्स ये भी हमारा एक एप्लीकेशन पे, इसका लिंक आपको मैं डिस्क्रिप्शन में प्रोवाइड कर देता हूँ, या मुझे व्हाट्सएप करें इस पार्टिकुलर नंबर पर डिटेल जानकारी प्राप्त करने के लिए कि कैसे मैं इस मेंटरशिप प्रोग्राम में इनरोल होना चाहता हूँ। तो मुझे व्हाट्सएप करके डिटेल जानकारी प्राप्त कर सकते हैं, या हमारे ऐप पे तो मैं लिंक डिस्क्रिप्शन में लिंक दे ही रहा हूँ।
है कि एक फॉरवर्ड परचेज कॉन्ट्रैक्ट है $10,000 का, उसको बैंक बी ने बुक किया अपने कस्टमर के लिए, रेट था 71.60 और ड्यू फॉर डिलीवरी है 7 डे लेटर। बैंक हैज कवर्ड इटसेल्फ इन मार्केट एट 71.68। बहुत सा सवाल है, समझिए ध्यान से। फॉरवर्ड परचेज कॉन्ट्रैक्ट है, कितने का है, $10,000 का है। फॉरवर्ड परचेज कॉन्ट्रैक्ट समझते हैं ना, ठीक है। बैंक बी ने बुक किया है अपने कस्टमर के लिए, किस रेट पे, 71.60 के रेट पे, और 7 दिन बाद डिलीवरी होगा। बैंक ने अपने आप को मार्केट पे कवर कर लिया है इस रेट पे, ठीक है। और फिर कह रहा है कि ऑन ड्यू डेट द कस्टमर रिक्वेस्ट टू एक्सटेंड द कॉन्ट्रैक्ट बाय 1 मंथ। द प्रिवेलिंग रेट अपडेट डेट के अंदर रेट ये है, 1 मंथ का रेट ये है, 2 मंथ का रेट ये है, और एक्सचेंज मार्जिन दे रखा है इतना, सेल और परचेज दोनों के लिए। तो पहला पूछा गया है कि रेट ऑफ कैंसिलेशन ऑफ फॉरवर्ड परचेज कॉन्ट्रैक्ट ऑन ड्यू डेट विल बी। तो यदि फॉरवर्ड परचेज कॉन्ट्रैक्ट को यदि कैंसिल करना है ड्यू डेट में, तो वो रेट ऑफ कैंसिलेशन क्या होगा, ठीक है। बहुत अच्छा सवाल है। फॉरवर्ड परचेज कॉन्ट्रैक्ट बेसिकली एक तरह का ना आपका इंस्ट्रूमेंट होता है, डेरिवेटिव इंस्ट्रूमेंट होता है, जिसके थ्रू हम करते क्या है कि अपने आप को फ्लक्चुएशन से, करेंसी फ्लक्चुएशन से अपने आप को सेव करते हैं। तो बैंक बी ने क्या किया, बैंक बी को लग रहा था कि हाँ 7 दिन बाद जब डिलीवरी होगा उस दिन जो है रेट हाई बढ़ सकता है, राइट। तो हमको हो सकता है कि ज़्यादा पैसा देना पड़े खरीदने के लिए, तो हमने क्या करता है, रेट फिक्स कर लेते हैं। कितना का रेट फिक्स कर लेते हैं, 71.60, ठीक है। और उसके बाद ड्यू डेट में क्या हुआ कि स्पॉट रेट दिखा इसको 70.10। तो बैंक तो बोल रही है कि सस्ता है, तो बैंक चाहेगी ना कि हम कैंसिल करवा लें फॉरवर्ड परचेज कॉन्ट्रैक्ट। अब सवाल है कि फॉरवर्ड परचेज कॉन्ट्रैक्ट यदि बैंक कैंसिल करवाना चाहे तो कैंसिलेशन का रेट क्या होगा, ठीक है। जैसे मान लीजिए कि आप एक कॉन्ट्रैक्ट खरीदते हैं, डॉलर को एक्सचेंज करना है इंडियन रुपीज में, फिक्स रेट है 71.60, राइट। फिक्स रेट कितना है, 7660, बैंक भी। लेकिन आप जो है कैंसिल करना चाह रहे हैं कॉन्ट्रैक्ट को, तो कैंसिल कराने के लिए बैंक को आपको डॉलर बेचना पड़ेगा, राइट, और इंडियन रुपीज खरीदना पड़ेगा आपसे। तो वो करंट मार्केट रेट को यूज करेगी। करंट मार्केट रेट क्या है, 70.10 है, देखिए यहाँ लिखा हुआ है 70.10 को यूज करेगी। लेकिन बैंक एक फी भी चार्ज करेगी, यानी कि 0.10%। यहाँ देखिए मार्जिन लिखा हुआ है 0.10%। तो आप क्या कीजिए, इस फी को अपने मार्केट रेट से सब्ट्रैक्ट कर लीजिए, यानी कि 70.10 का आप 0.10% निकालेंगे तो आपको बेसिकली इतना मिलेगा, ठीक है। तो जैसे समझिए कि आप एक परचेज को रिटर्न कर रहे हैं, आपने कोई चीज़ खरीदा और आप उसको रिटर्न करना चाह रहे हैं, तो बैंक भी कैलकुलेट करिए कि वापस आपको कितना दे, ठीक है। तो बैंक बी ने एक फॉरवर्ड परचेज कॉन्ट्रैक्ट बुक किया, $10,000 का है, यहाँ देखिए लिखा गया है $10,000 का बुकिंग हुआ है, ठीक है। और रेट क्या है, 71.60 फॉर द कस्टमर ड्यूरिंग 7 डेज। बैंक भी अपने आप को कवर कर लिया इस रेट पे, कस्टमर कॉन्ट्रैक्ट को एक्सटेंड करना चाह रहा है 1 मंथ से, ठीक है। तो पहला है कैंसिलेशन रेट को निकालने का। तो कैंसिल करने के लिए बैंक बी को USD बेचना पड़ेगा, INR खरीदना पड़ेगा। प्रिवेलिंग स्पॉट रेट इतना है, तो बैंक USD बेच रही है तो उसको लोअर रेट मिलेगा स्पॉट रेट का, जो कि 70.10 है, लेकिन एक्सचेंज मार्जिन है 0.10% का। तो आप 70.10 का 0.10% निकाल लीजिए और उसको माइनस कर दीजिए, तो लगभग 70.03 आएगा। तो जो कैंसिलेशन का रेट होगा ड्यू डेट में वो 70.03 होगा। सिंपल सी बात है, बात करें, जब भी कॉन्ट्रैक्ट कैंसिल किया जाएगा तो बैंक भी USD बेचेगी और INR खरीदेगी स्पॉट रेट पे इतना, माने कारण से स्मॉल एक्सचेंज मार्जिन इतना, जिस कारण से 70.03 होगा। फिर से वही सवाल है, फ्यूचर कॉन्ट्रैक्ट है, डिलीवरी फरवरी में 21 में होने वाला है, यूएसडी इतना अगेंस्ट स्पॉट एक्सचेंज ऑफ इतना, ऑल्सो फ्यूचर कॉन्ट्रैक्ट ऑफ यूरो इतना फॉर डिलीवरी इतना, ट्रेडेड है इतना, ठीक है। तो व्हाट विल लॉस एंड प्रॉफिट बाय स्पॉट रेट ऑफ जीपी। अब यहाँ पे देखिए ये अलग तरह का सवाल है, इसमें आपको क्या दिया हुआ है कि दो तरह का फ्यूचर कॉन्ट्रैक्ट हो रहा है, एक तो हमारा जीबीपी में हो रहा है, ग्रेट ब्रिटेन पाउंड में हो रहा है, ठीक है। डिलीवरी कब हो रहा है? 25 फरवरी को, ठीक है। और यूएसडी दिया हुआ है 1.350, कितना दिया हुआ है? 1.350, और स्पॉट एक्सचेंज रेट है 1.40, और दूसरा है कि फ्यूचर कॉन्ट्रैक्ट है यूरो का दिया हुआ है 20,000 का, ठीक है। और डिलीवरी कब होना है? 24 फरवरी को डिलीवरी होना है। इसको ट्रेड किया जा रहा है 1.20 यूएसडी पे, स्पॉट रेट दे रखा है 1.25 पे। चलिए अब आगे बढ़ते हैं कि लॉस और प्रॉफिट बायर को कितना होगा यदि जीबीपी का जो स्पॉट रेट है वो इतना है। बढ़िया सवाल है। तो आपको तो आपको प्रॉफिट या लॉस बताना है बायर को, ठीक है। तो हमें क्या करना पड़ेगा कि फ्यूचर प्राइस को स्पॉट प्राइस से कंपेयर करना पड़ेगा डिलीवरी डेट में, तभी जाके हम प्रॉफिट या लॉस बता पाएंगे, ठीक है। तो फ्यूचर कॉन्ट्रैक्ट है जीबीपी का $25,000 का, 25,000 जीबीपी का, और फ्यूचर प्राइस दे रखा है 1.350, इनिशियल स्पॉट एक्सचेंज रेट 1.40 दिया हुआ, देखिए यहाँ दिया हुआ था, इनिशियल स्पॉट एक्सचेंज रेट जो है 1.40 है, यहाँ लिखा है ना, अगेंस्ट स्पॉट एक्सचेंज रेट ऑफ इतना। तो डिलीवरी डेट में स्पॉट एक्सचेंज कितना है? 1.4120, ठीक है ना। जो हमारा डिलीवरी डेट होगा यहाँ देखिए लिखा हुआ है कि 25 तारीख को जो स्पॉट रेट है, डिलीवरी डेट 25 तारीख को ही तो है, 25 तारीख को स्पॉट रेट दिया 1.4120। पहले आप फ्यूचर प्राइस को कैलकुलेट कीजिए। तो बायर एग्री किया कि वो जीबीपी को फ्यूचर प्राइस में खरीदेगा जो कि है 1.3550। देखिए फ्यूचर कॉन्ट्रैक्ट का मतलब यही होता है ना कि जो बायर है वो बोल रहा है कि हम जीबीपी 25,000 खरीदेंगे, लेकिन किस प्राइस पे खरीदेंगे जीबीपी 25,000 वो देखिए, ये खरीदेगा जीबीपी 25,000 को, लेकिन इसने फ्यूचर प्राइस क्या सेट करके रखा है? तो 1.3550, मतलब इस रेट पे वो खरीदेगा, ठीक है। तो ये यही होता है फ्यूचर कॉन्ट्रैक्ट। तो आप प्राइस को यदि कंपेयर कीजिए तो फ्यूचर प्राइस है हमारा 1.350 और स्पॉट प्राइस जो 25 फरवरी का है वो है 1.4120, यहाँ देखिए दिया हुआ है 1.4120। बेसिकली तो यहाँ पे बायर ने लॉकिंग किया है प्राइस को 1.350 यूएसडी पर जीबीपी, लेकिन मार्केट प्राइस जो है 1.4120 पर जीबीपी है, ठीक है। तो बायर के पास बेनिफिट है ना कि वो जीबीपी को सस्ते में खरीद रहा है दैन मार्केट प्राइस, क्योंकि मार्केट प्राइस है 1.4120 और वो खरीद रहा है 1.350 में, तो प्रॉफिट पर जीबीपी कितना हो रहा है? 0.062 का हो रहा है। और टोटल प्रॉफिट कितना हो जाएगा? तो टोटल अमाउंट कितना है? 25,000 जीबीपी था, तो 25,000 को मल्टीप्लाई कर दीजिए 0.062 से, तो आपको 1550 यूएसडी का प्रॉफिट मिल जाएगा। समझ में आया? पहला सवाल समझ में आया कि यदि आप जीपी 25,000 जीपी को खरीदते हैं अपने फ्यूचर कॉन्ट्रैक्ट को ही एक्सरसाइज करते हुए 25 फरवरी को, तो आपको प्रॉफिट होने वाला है $1550 का, ठीक है। ये पहला सवाल था। अब दूसरे सवाल पे आते हैं। लेट्स कम टू द नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन, जो कि हमारा दूसरा डेटा दिया हुआ है उससे रिलेटेड है। चलिए दूसरा सवाल है कि फ्यूचर कॉन्ट्रैक्ट वही है, सेम सिचुएशन है। फ्यूचर कॉन्ट्रैक्ट एक और फ्यूचर कॉन्ट्रैक्ट है यूरो 20,000 का, इसको 24 फरवरी को डिलीवर करना है। उसको ट्रेड किया जा रहा है 1.20 यूएसडी अगेंस्ट स्पॉट रेट ऑफ इतना। तो स्पॉट रेट उस दिन इतना था, उस पर ट्रेडिंग किया जा रहा है इसमें इतना, और 1.2710 जो है उस दिन का 25 तारीख का ये है आपका। तो अब सवाल है कि आपको बताना है कि लॉस और प्रॉफिट क्या होगा। हाँ, बायर यदि यूरो वाला केस है, मतलब ये वाला केस है। चलिए सॉल्व करते हैं। तो यहाँ पे यूरो का अमाउंट कितना है? 20,000 यूरो है। फ्यूचर प्राइस कितना है? 1.20। स्पॉट रेट क्या है? कॉन्ट्रैक्ट के टाइम में 1.25 है, ठीक है। तो आप फाइनल स्पॉट रेट देख लीजिए। फाइनल स्पॉट रेट जो यूरो का होगा 25 तारीख को, वो कितना होगा? 1.2710। ये यहाँ दिया हुआ है क्वेश्चन में आपको 1.2710, ठीक है। तो अब सवाल है कि आप देखिए कि जो स्पॉट रेट है उस दिन का स्पॉट रेट है वो है 1.2710, और इसने जो रेट फिक्स किया है बायर ने, वो कितना रेट फिक्स किया है? वो फिक्स किया है 1.20, ठीक है। तो ऑब्वियस ही बात है वो एक्सरसाइज करना चाहेगा, ठीक है। तो फ्यूचर कॉन्ट्रैक्ट जब भी इंटर करेगा तो वो चाहेगा कि यूरो को 1.20 पे खरीदे जिसपे उसने फिक्स किया था, ठीक है। तो आप क्या कीजिए, दोनों को माइनस कर दीजिए तो उसका प्रॉफिट निकल जाएगा, यानी 0.0710, और उसको मल्टीप्लाई कर देंगे नंबर ऑफ यूरो से जो कि हमारा 20,000 है, तो आपको टोटल प्रॉफिट मिल जाएगा जो कि 1420 होगा इस केस में। फिर से वही सवाल है। इसमें देखिए इस तरह का केस स्टडी पूछा गया था। फ्यूचर कॉन्ट्रैक्ट है इतना, $US इतना पे इसने ट्रेड किया, स्पॉट एक्सचेंज रेट इतना है, फिर फ्यूचर कॉन्ट्रैक्ट इतना का है, ट्रेड किया इतना पे, स्पॉट एक्सचेंज रेट इतना है। व्हाट इज द प्रॉफिट या लॉस टू बायर ऑन यूरो फ्यूचर इफ द स्पॉट? देखिए स्पॉट रेट हमने 1.18 कर दिया। आप बताइए क्या प्रॉफिट या लॉस है? ये मॉड्यूल सी का सवाल है, ठीक है। बताइए अब 1 पॉइंट, आप देखिए स्पॉट रेट को हमने 1.18 कर दिया, ठीक है। आप समझिए कि जब 25 तारीख आएगा तो उसको 1.18 एक ये यूरो का वैल्यू 1.18 यूएसडी होगा, और अभी जो 1 यूरो का वैल्यू है हमने जो फिक्स कर रखा है वो 1.20 है, तो वो तो एक्सरसाइज नहीं करेगा अपने फ्यूचर कॉन्ट्रैक्ट को, क्योंकि वहाँ पे लॉस हो रहा है उसको, ठीक है। तो नहीं, यहाँ पे कोई ऑप्शन नहीं होता है, ठीक है। तो वो 1.20 जो भी रहे, तो यहाँ पे बायर जो है बेच सकता है यूरो को फाइनल स्पॉट रेट ऑफ 1.18 आई बॉट इन द फ्यूचर ऑफ यूएसडी, ठीक है। तो लॉस कितने का होने वाला है, सेट लिया ही गया है ऐसे। एक्चुअली इसको मैं क्वेश्चन थोड़ा सही से लिख देता हूँ, ये क्वेश्चन सही से लिखा नहीं गया है, मैं बता देता हूँ। इसमें आपको पूरा बीएफएम का कंप्लीट सिलेबस का कवरेज है, सभी चैप्टर से क्वेश्चन लिए गए हैं। देखिए दिया हुआ है करेंसी रेट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट पर एनम, ठीक है, और यहाँ पे मंथ दिए गए हैं, ठीक है। अब देखिए यहाँ पे क्वेश्चन को थोड़ा सा मैं यहाँ पे सही से लिख देता हूँ, क्योंकि यहाँ पे देखिए पहले हम लोग यहाँ पे देखते हैं ये सब करेंसी है यूएसडी, और ये है हमारा 3 मंथ का, ये है 6 मंथ का, और ये है 12 मंथ का। तो यहाँ पे क्या दिया हुआ है बेसिकली आपको, ये करेंसी सेट है और कॉरेस्पॉन्डिंग करेंसी सेट का आपको इंटरेस्ट रेट, करेंसी रेट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट दिया हुआ है। तो ये जो 1.5 2.5 देख रहे हैं ना, ये रेट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट है, समझे। तो 3 महीना में जो यूएसडी का रेट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट है वो 1.5% है, 6 महीना में जो यूएसडी का इंटरेस्ट रेट है वो 2% है, 12 महीना में जो यूएसडी का इंटरेस्ट रेट है वो 2.25% है। उसी प्रकार से सऊदी रियाल की बात करें तो 3 महीना में रेट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट 6.5 है, 6 महीना में 7.5 है, 12 महीना में 8.5 है। आईएनआर की रेट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट की बात करें तो 3 महीना में 5.75, 6 महीना में 6% और 12 महीना में 6.25। तो ये आपको समझ में आ गया, ठीक है। तो ये बेसिकली क्या है, रेट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट है कॉरेस्पॉन्डिंग टू डिफरेंट मंथ, 3 मंथ, 6 मंथ एंड 12 मंथ। अब सवाल है कि व्हाट विल बी, ये सवाल एग्जैक्टली 5 नंबर का केस स्टडी आया था इसी प्रकार से, बहु यही क्वेश्चन ही था जो मैं आपके सामने प्रस्तुत कर रहा हूं। व्हाट विल बी द 6 मंथ यूएसडी फॉरवर्ड रेट इफ स्पॉट डॉलर इज 73.75। क्या कर रहा है कि स्पॉट डॉलर जो दिया हुआ है यानी $1 जो है वो 73.75 रुपीज़ है, ठीक है। तो आपसे पूछा जा रहा है कि 6 मंथ फॉरवर्ड रेट क्या होगा, 6 मंथ फॉरवर्ड रेट क्या होगा, आपको ये डेटा का यूज करना है। चलिए आइए सॉल्व करते हैं इसको। आपके सामने 4 ऑप्शन दिया रहेगा इस प्रकार से, तो इसका तरीका मैं बता देता हूं कैसे आपको सॉल्व करना है। बेसिकली आर्बिट्रेज से मिलता जुलता कंसेप्ट है। देखिए सबसे पहले आज का आप पहले आप क्या कीजिए, 6 मंथ का यूएसडी का इंटरेस्ट रेट देख लीजिए और आईएनआर का, क्योंकि यूएसडी और आईएनआर के बीच का ट्रांजेक्शन हो रहा है, ठीक है। तो 6 मंथ का आप यूएसडी और आईएनआर का इंटरेस्ट रेट देख लीजिए। तो यूएसडी का 6 मंथ वाला 2% है और आईएनआर का 6% है ना। तो आप यहाँ पे लिख दीजिए 6% और 2%, वही मैंने यहाँ लिखा है। 6 मंथ यूएसडी 2% है और 6 मंथ आईएनआर 6% है, ठीक है। तो इसका मतलब क्या हुआ, आज के डेट में जो आपको स्पॉट रेट दिया हुआ है वो क्या दिया हुआ है, 1 यूएसडी बराबर 73.75। एक बार फिर से देखिए, ये दिया हुआ है ना स्पॉट रेट, 1 यूएसडी बराबर 73.75 आईएनआर, बिल्कुल सही है, ठीक है। तो आप इसको क्या कीजिए ना, 100 से मल्टीप्लाई कर लीजिए। 100 से क्यों मैं कर रहा हूँ, क्योंकि दोस्तों 100 से कैलकुलेशन करना आसान होता है, इसीलिए मैं 100 से मल्टीप्लाई करने कर रहा हूँ। तो पहले आप लिखिए कि $1 बराबर 73.75 रुपीज, इसको भी 100 से मल्टीप्लाई कीजिए, इसको भी 100 से मल्टीप्लाई कीजिए। तो ये कितना हो जाएगा, $100 नहीं हो जाएगा, और ये कितना हो जाएगा 73.75 नहीं हो जाएगा। तो इससे क्या हुआ, डेसिमल मेरा हट गया, डेसिमल हट जाता है तो काफ़ी आसान हो जाता है चीज़। अब आप क्या निकालिए, इंटरेस्ट निकालिए दोनों साइड में, राइट। तो इंटरेस्ट कैसे दोनों साइड में निकालेंगे, तो आपको पता है कि डॉलर पे जो इंटरेस्ट रेट है वो कितना है, 2% का है, और आईएनआर पे कितना है, 6% का, अभी मैंने लिखा है ना, ठीक है। तो इंटरेस्ट रेट, इंटरेस्ट कैसे निकालेंगे, तो आपको इंटरेस्ट का फॉर्मूला पता है ना, क्या होता है इंटरेस्ट का फॉर्मूला बताइए। इंटरेस्ट का फॉर्मूला होता है, मैं यहाँ साइड में लिखता हूँ, P इंटू R इंटू T अपॉन 100, ठीक है। तो सबसे पहले आप क्या करेंगे, सबसे पहले आप लेफ्ट हैंड साइड का इंटरेस्ट निकालेंगे और फिर राइट हैंड साइड का इंटरेस्ट निकालेंगे। कैसे निकालेंगे ये मैं आपको समझाता हूँ। देखिए यहाँ पे मैं, देखिए पहले प्रिंसिपल हमारा 100 हो गया, क्योंकि $100 का इंटरेस्ट P हो गया मेरा। रेट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट कितना है, 2% है डॉलर का, और टाइम जो है हम लोग 6 महीना का लेंगे तो 6/12 कर देते हैं, ठीक है, क्योंकि ईयर से डिवाइड कर लिए, मंथ में हो गया, और फिर डिवाइडेड बाय 100, ठीक है। अब आईआर का निकालिए तो 7375 मल्टीप्लाइड बाई आपका ये रेट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट यहाँ 6% है, अपॉन 6 इंटू 12, 6/12 अपॉन 100। देखिए जब तक आप कीजिएगा नहीं ना तब तक आप गलती कीजिएगा ही कीजिएगा, इसीलिए करना मैं कह रहा हूँ। तो इसको आप सॉल्व कीजिए, तो ये सॉल्व करेंगे ना तो ये पता है कितना हो जाएगा, ये पूरा 1 आएगा, और इसको सॉल्व करेंगे ना तो ये आएगा आपका 221.25। तो ये क्या निकल गया, इंटरेस्ट निकल गया, ठीक है। यहाँ तक क्लियर है। अब आपने इंटरेस्ट जब निकाल लिया तब आपको क्या करना है, एक तरफ इंटरेस्ट निकला 1, एक तरफ इंटरेस्ट निकला हमारा 221.5। इसको मैं इरेज कर देता हूँ ऊपर वाले को,
ठीक है, ये तो आप यहाँ तक तो आप समझ गए होंगे कि कैसे ये डिराइव हुआ है, ठीक है। तो अब क्या करना है कि आपका जो टोटल अमाउंट होता है उसका फॉर्मूला क्या होता है, प्रिंसिपल प्लस इंटरेस्ट, यही ना होता है। तो प्रिंसिपल हमारा कितना था यूएसडी का प्रिंसिपल था आपका 100, याद है, यूएसडी का प्रिंसिपल कितना था, 100 था, ठीक है। तो क्या करेंगे, 100 हमारा प्रिंसिपल है और उसमें हम इंटरेस्ट जोड़ देंगे तो ये अमाउंट हो गया। और इधर कितना प्रिंसिपल था, 7375 प्लस 221.25 ये था। और फिर दोनों को इक्वेट करते, बेसिकली यहाँ पे आप क्या कीजिए ना, डॉलर डाल दीजिए सिंबल, और यहाँ पे क्या कीजिए आप INR सिंबल डाल दीजिए, ठीक है। तो बेसिकली क्या होगा कि $101 बराबर, इसको यदि आप जोड़ते हैं तो कितना आता है, इसको जोड़ते हैं तो 7596.25 आता है। कितना आता है, 7596.25। इसको कैलकुलेट करेंगे ना तो आएगा 7596.25। सवाल में आपसे क्या पूछा जा रहा है कि 6 महीना बाद पर डॉलर कितना रुपीज़ होगा, तो 1 INR कितना हो जाएगा, 7596.25 डिवाइडेड बाई 101, यूनिटरी मेथड। इसको कैलकुलेट करेंगे तो यू विल गेट 75.21। तो ये हमारा आंसर हो जाएगा। तो 75.21 इज द करेक्ट आंसर। तो यही मेथडोलॉजी आपको अप्लाई करना है ऐसे सवालों में। अब दूसरा सवाल देखिए, व्हाट विल बी द 12 मंथ USD फॉरवर्ड रेट इफ स्पॉट डॉलर इज 74। तो सबसे पहले यहाँ पे क्वेश्चन को पढ़िए, क्या लिखा जा रहा है, आपसे पूछा जा रहा है कि 12 महीना का USD फॉरवर्ड रेट क्या होगा। तो आपको दिया क्या हुआ है कि $1 बराबर 74.00 INR, ठीक है। तो आप सबसे पहले कुछ नहीं लिखा रहा था, INR ही मानते हैं। सबसे पहले आप एक काम कीजिए कि सबसे पहले आप टेबल में जाइए और टेबल में देखिए कि 6 महीना 12 महीना का कितना रेट है, रेट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट है। आइए जरा टेबल में चलते हैं, लेट्स मूव टू द टेबल एंड सी द व्हाट इज द रेट फॉर 12 मंथ। देखिए यहाँ पे 12 मंथ USD दे रखा है 2%, ठीक है। तो 12 मंथ का हम डेटा यहाँ लिख देते हैं क्योंकि बार बार इस डेटा का यूज होगा, ठीक है। तो 12 मंथ का USD दे रखा है कितना, 2%, सॉरी 6, यहाँ देखिए ये तो 6 महीना, ये है 2%, ठीक है। और 3 6 12 नहीं सॉरी 12 का 2.25% है, कितना है 2.25%। तो USD का है 2.25% और INR का है 6.25%, ठीक है। तो ये आपको समझ में आ गया। चलिए तो अब हम लोग वापस क्वेश्चन में आते हैं। ये डाटा आपको बार बार यूज़ करना पड़ेगा, अपने क्वेश्चन से इसको नोट कर लेना होगा, ठीक है। तो एक काम करते हैं, इसको हम स्क्रीनशॉट ले ही लेते हैं इसका, ताकि बार बार हमको यहाँ पे नहीं आना पड़े, राइट। चलिए तो इसको हम लोग इसका हमने स्क्रीनशॉट रख लिया है आपके एक पर्पज़ के लिए, ताकि बार बार हमको यहाँ ना आना पड़े। अब देखते हैं, सो 12 मंथ पे आते हैं हम लोग, 12 मंथ वाले केस पे आते हैं। तो 12 मंथ में हमको क्या बेसिकली है कि आपको करंट स्पॉट रेट दिया हुआ है, इसको 100 से मल्टीप्लाई करना है, कीजिए ना कीजिए कोई फ़र्क नहीं पड़ता है यहाँ पे, राइट। यहाँ पे देखिए, यहाँ 12 मंथ फॉरवर्ड रेट, हाँ स्पॉट डॉलर दिया हुआ है 74.00, राइट। तो 74.00 स्पॉट से आप स्टार्ट करेंगे और 100 से मल्टीप्लाई कर दीजिए दोनों तरफ। 100 से क्या रहता है ना, आसान रहता है, इसीलिए 100 से करते थे गुना। तो यहाँ कितना हो जाएगा, $100 बराबर 7400 INR हो जाएगा। अब इस पर आप इंटरेस्ट निकालिए। इंटरेस्ट कैसे निकालिएगा, इंटरेस्ट निकालिएगा आप 100 को मल्टीप्लाई कर दीजिए 2.25 से, और इसको 1 ईयर का है तो 1 लिख दीजिए, अपॉन 12 से करना नहीं, अपॉन 100 कर दीजिए, ठीक है। तो ये आ जाएगा लेफ्ट हैंड साइड आपका। और फिर राइट हैंड साइड क्या आएगा, राइट हैंड साइड आएगा आपका 7400 इंटू 6.25 इंटू 1 अपॉन 100। इसको कैलकुलेट कीजिए तो आपको मिल जाएगा 2.25। इसको कैलकुलेट कीजिए तो आपको मिल जाएगा 462.5। तो ये हमारा इंटरेस्ट कंपोनेंट है। और आपको अमाउंट से मतलब है ना, यू आर कंसर्न विद अमाउंट, तो इंटरेस्ट और प्रिंसिपल को जोड़ेंगे तभी तो अमाउंट मिलेगा। और ये हमारा अमाउंट है, सॉरी ये हमारा प्रिंसिपल है, तो इन दोनों को ऐड करेंगे तब हमें अमाउंट मिलेगा। उसी तरह 7400 हमारा प्रिंसिपल है और 462.5 हमारा इंटरेस्ट है, दोनों को ऐड करेंगे तो अमाउंट मिलेगा। चलिए करते हैं ऐड। देखिए आप यदि 100 और 2 को जोड़ेंगे ना, सेम चीज़ सेम कैलकुलेशन है, बार बार हम लोग कर रहे हैं। तो यदि आप 100 और 2 को ऐड करेंगे तो ये आपको ये मिलेगा, और ये इसको ऐड करेंगे तो ये मिलेगा। तो बेसिकली क्या आ रहा है इक्वेशन कि $1 इतना डॉलर, सॉरी इतना डॉलर बराबर इतना रुपीज़। तो $1 बराबर कितना हो जाएगा, यूनिटरी मेथड यूज कर लीजिए, ठीक है। यूनिटरी मेथड आप यूज करेंगे तो आपको जो है $1 बराबर मिलेगा 76.89। समझ में दोस्तों कैसे कैलकुलेट किया जाता है। उसी तरह आपसे पूछा जा रहा है कि 3 मंथ सऊदी रियाल फॉरवर्ड रेट क्या होगा यदि स्पॉट सऊदी रियाल 19.32 दिया हुआ है। तो ठीक है, आप सबसे पहले देख लीजिए कि इंटरेस्ट रेट कितना है सऊदी रियाल का। यहाँ पे देखिए सऊदी रियाल का 3 मंथ पे बोल रहा है ना, तो 3 6 12, 3 मंथ में 6.5 है, INR का 5.75 है। इसको नोट कर लीजिए कितना है सऊदी का 6.5, और INR का कितना है, INR का है आई थिंक इट इज़ 5 कितना था, एक बार देख लेते हैं। INR का है 5.75, कितना है 5.75। ये नोट कर लिया हमने, क्योंकि ये बार बार काम आएगा। अब देखिए, अब आपको स्पॉट दिया हुआ 19.32, तो सबसे पहले क्या करेंगे आप, सबसे पहले आप लिखेंगे 1 रियाल। अब रियाल का मुझे याद नहीं है कैसे लिखा जाता है। 1 रियाल बराबर 19.32 रुपीज़, ठीक है। 100 से गुना कर देंगे तो 100 रियाल कितना हो जाएगा, 9132 हो जाएगा। अब इसको क्या करेंगे, इसका आप इंटरेस्ट निकालेंगे। इंटरेस्ट निकालने के लिए क्या करेंगे, परसेंटेज ऑफ इंटरेस्ट कितना है, 6.5 है, तो 100 इंटू 6.5, 3 मंथ का रहा है तो 3 को 12 से डिवाइड कर देंगे, अपॉन 100 हो जाएगा। और इधर क्या हो जाएगा, 9132 इंटू 5.75 इंटू 3/12 इंटू 100। तो इसको आपको इंडिविजुअली कैलकुलेट करना पड़ेगा दोनों तरफ, तो वो मैंने कर रखा है आपके लिए। तो एक तरफ आएगा 1.625, एक तरफ इधर क्या आएगा 1.625 रियाल, इधर क्या आएगा 27.7725 रुपीज़। तो बेसिकली तो 1 रियाल क्या हो जाएगा, इसको डिवाइड कर दीजिए इससे, तो ये आपका आ जाएगा फॉरवर्ड रेट, समझ में। तो ये सऊदी रियाल का निकल गया। अब उसी तरह पूछेगा 6 महीना सऊदी रियाल बता दो, तो बेसिकली आपसे कुछ भी पूछे इस तरह का सवाल में, तो आप कर सकते हैं कि नहीं कर सकते हैं, सिंपल सा चीज़ है, आप कर सकते हैं। तो फ्रेंड्स, होपफुली आपको ये केस स्टडी बन जाएगा यदि इस तरह का सवाल रिपीट होता है तो। दोस्तों, आपको मैं बता दूं कि इस तरह का बहुत सारा क्वेश्चन है, हमने पिछले 5 साल से ऑब्जर्व किया है BFM के क्वेश्चन को, और हमारे पास लगभग इस तरह के बहुत सारे क्वेश्चन है जो कि प्रीवियस ईयर में आ चुके हैं। यदि आप इसको अवेल करना चाहते हैं दोस्तों, आपको मैं अपना क्रैश कोर्स प्रस्तुत करता हूं मात्र 125 रुपए में। आपको PDF, वीडियो, मॉक टेस्ट, क्विक रिवीजन सेशन सब कुछ मिल रहा है हमारे क्रैश कोर्स में, BFM के क्रैश कोर्स में। आप मुझे व्हाट्सएप कर सकते हैं इस पार्टिकुलर नंबर पर, यानी तो डिस्क्रिप्शन सेक्शन में जाइए, वहाँ पे मैंने क्रैश कोर्स का लिंक अपलोड कर दिया है, आप वहाँ से परचेज कर सकते हैं मात्र 125 रुपीज़ में। तो होपफुली आप आगे बढ़ते हैं हम लोग। इस क्वेश्चन को समझ गए होंगे कि किस प्रकार का क्वेश्चन यदि आपसे पूछा जाए कि पूछे कि 6 मंथ फॉरवर्ड रेट कितना होगा, 9 मंथ फॉरवर्ड रेट कितना होगा, तो आपको क्या करना है, सबसे पहले जो आपको टेबल दिया हुआ है इंटरेस्ट रेट का उसको पढ़ना है, फिर आपको ये जो फॉर्मूला मैंने बताया इसी को फॉलो करना है। इस प्रकार के 5 सवाल आए थे, जैसे कि आप यहाँ देखिए, व्हाट विल द 12 मंथ सऊदी रियाल फॉरवर्ड रेट इफ द स्पॉट सऊदी रियाल इज 18। अब 12 मंथ सऊदी रियाल कर रहा है, तो सबसे पहले क्या करेंगे, सबसे पहले आप लिखेंगे कि 1 रियाल बराबर 18 रुपीज़ लिखेंगे, 100 से मल्टीप्लाई कर देंगे, 100 रियाल बराबर 1800 रुपीज़। फिर आप देख लीजिए चार्ट से कि 12 मंथ का रियाल कितना है, इंटरेस्ट 8% है, और इंडिया का कितना है 6.25%। तो ये आपको दिया हुआ है 8% और 6.25%, ठीक है। तो इसको क्या करेंगे, इसको लिख देंगे 8 से गुना कर देंगे, और 1 महीना 1 साल का है तो पूरा हो जाएगा अपॉन 100। और इधर क्या करेंगे 1800 इंटू 6.25 इंटू 1/100, सॉल्व कर लीजिए, फिर ऐड कर दीजिए और दोनों को इक्वेट कर दीजिए, तो आपको एक रियाल कितना सऊदी के बराबर है वो निकल जाए। फर्स्ट थिंग इज इमेजिन अ टेक्सटाइल एक्सपोर्टर हु सेल क्लॉथ एंड फैब्रिक अब्रोड। लास्ट ईयर दे मेड सेल्स ऑफ 300 lakh, and this year they expect to sell even more, around 500 lakh. Since this exporter needs money to fulfill large order, so they go to the bank and ask for credit facility, that is credit or loan. The bank agree to provide a total of 100 lakh but split it into different types of loan. So the first thing is PCL, that is called pre-shipment credit. So on this what is this? This is the money the exporter can borrow before shipping the goods. So suppose this is shipping. So before shipping PCL is granted, and the bank gives the limit that up to 50 lakh I can provide you, but on that you have to take 25% margin on the FOB value. What is this FOB value? FOB value is called free on board value, right? So see, suppose FOB value is 1 lakh. Suppose FOB value is 1 lakh. So on this 1 lakh, 25%, which is nothing but 25,000. So this 25,000 is borne by the exporter, and the remaining 75%, which is 75,000, this will be borne by the bank. Bank will provide. So this is what it means to say when it's a 25% margin, right? Okay, and the maximum amount which the bank can grant loan is 50 lakh. That is called limit. And now after shipment, some bank also grant loan in the form of post shipment credit, and you know these 3 things which is written here, like FBP, FBD, FBN, all these 3 things are the part and parcel of this post shipment finance, that is called PSL. See, we have already covered all these things in our theory portion, like what is FBP, what is FBD. Let me remind you once more. So when we talk about FBP, this is foreign bill purchase. This happened in the case of side bill, you know, and here the bank also say, I will provide you limit of 50 lakh, and on this you have to provide 10% margin, right? What is FBD? FBD is in the case of usance bill, right? When there is a time period after which the buyer will make the payment, he will not pay immediately. And in the case of usance bill, the bank will keep 15% margin. That means 15% amount will be borne by the exporter. And now FBN is negotiation, and in the case of negotiation there is no margin and entire amount will be borne by the bank, that is 100 lakh is the credit. So these three cases are the case of post shipment, and this is the case of pre shipment. These are the limit which you have to keep in mind to solve this problem. Now what happened? The exporter receives an order from the UK company to send textile worth 50 lakh dollar, okay, and the shipment is supposed to be sent by 15th 9, I think it is 2021, right? Now to complete this order, the exporter need money, right, to purchase raw material and pay for other expenses before the goods can be shipped. So what he did, he went to the bank. When he went to the bank on 2nd June 2021, on 2nd June 2021, the exporter went to the bank and he requested the PCL for the order, and which the bank releases. So the bank agree and provide the loan based on the value of his export order. The money is released with certain condition like 25%, we have already told you. Now this PCL allow the exporter to get the money from the bank before the goods are shipped, so that they can pay for production cost. Now on 31st August 2021, right, so after shipping the textile, the shipment has been done. The exporter submit the shipping document to the bank, and the total value of shipment was $48,000. You know why it has become 48,000? Because this $2,000 has went for expenses like shipping. There will be shipping expense also, which has to be borne by the exporter, and after subtracting that, this has come to $48,000. So the payment from the UK, this is 30-day DA. You know what is the meaning of this? That the UK importer will pay after 30 days, right? That is called after acceptance, day after acceptance. DA means what? DA means day after acceptance. That is this indicate that this is the case of side bill. And I told you that in the case of side bill in post shipment finance, we have to take FBD. See, these are the key insight which you have to take. These are the key terms we have to see for, and then only you can decide whether I will take FBD, whether I will take FBP, whether I will take FBN. So it clearly indicates that this is the case of usance bill, and I told you that in the case of usance bill, we take the help of FBD, that is foreign bill discounted, right? So now the exporter asks the bank to give them money upfront. See, what is this? That after 30 days UK company will pay in 30 days. But what exporter need? Exporter need immediate money so that he can fulfill other order also. So the exporter asks the bank to give them money upfront instead of waiting for the UK company to pay in 30 days. The bank agrees and give them an advance, but with an 15% margin. Already I have told you that on FBD the bank has given 15% margin. So also the bank, what the bank did? The bank adjusted the amount that was borrowed as PCL earlier and deduct interest. Bank will obviously deduct interest. Now comes the realization of document. So by October 29, 2021, the value date was 27, 2021, right? The UK company finally paid the amount to the exporter bank, and this money is credited in the Nostro account. But the foreign bank charges a fee which was $250 for this transaction. So now what are the interest rate? You can see up to 180 days the PCL charges, bank charges 8.50 interest rate, and for post shipment up to 90 days 8.50 and 10.50 after that. And overdue interest rate is what? So if the bank payment is late, the bank charges a higher interest rate of 12.50. Now the next thing, they have provided you the exchange rate. The exchange rate is given on two dates. The first date on which pre-shipment credit was granted by the bank, and the second date on which post-shipment credit was granted. On the date pre-shipment credit was granted, the bill buying rate was 75.20 and the bill selling rate was 75.40. Now see, first of all you have to decide whether to take bill buying rate and whether to take the bill selling rate. So you have to go to the basics. See what is happening here. This is the bank and this exporter is going to the bank, okay. I am explaining the case of PCL, right? So exporter is going to the bank. Exporter says that I have received an order of $50,000. So provide me the finance. So in this case, bank is taking dollar from the bank is providing rupees to the exporter, right? So you can also say that if we talk about this exchange rate, so this exchange rate means how much worth $1 is as compared to Indian rupees, right? So on June 2 2021 the exchange rate was 75.20. This means the rate at which bank could buy dollar from the exporter. So you can say that bank is buying $50,000 from the exporter and he is paying rupee. That is what is happening. So we will take the bill buying rate. Okay, because what bank is doing with the base rate, our base rate is dollar, the bank is buying the base rate, that's why we will take the bill buying rate, which is nothing but 75.20. okay, not bill selling rate. And on 31st August 2021 when the bank granted the post shipment credit, and it is clear that it is the case of discounting. So discounting, what is happening, this exporter is again approaching the bank and telling that this is the bill, you take this bill and in the place of this bill give me the amount, right? And again what bank is doing, try to understand. So against this bill the bank will pay the amount which is 70, which has changed to 74.85, right? The bank will pay the amount which is changed to 74.85. So these two rate you have to take. In the case of pre-shipment finance, bill buying rate, and in the case of post-shipment finance, you have to take the bill buying rate. Okay, now let's first calculate the PCL amount. What is the PCL amount? You have to calculate. What is the meaning of this PCL? Means the amount that the bank provide finance to the exporter. How much amount the bank has provided the finance. So first thing first, this exporter went to the bank and he told that I have received the order for $50,000 on 2/6/2021, and you have to multiply this $50,000 with the bill buying rate, which is nothing but 75.20, and after multiplication how much you will get? You will get 37,60,000, right? Okay, now this 37,60,000 was the exchange value for dollar, for rupees, in terms of rupees, right? So this particular exporter has received this much order. But one thing you have to note, that you can see after he has given only 48,000 US dollar. Where does 2,000 gone? So this 2,000 was gone for shipping charge, like insurance cost, etc. So this insurance cost has to be borne by the exporter. Bank will do nothing. And what is the insurance rate given in the question? It is given, insurance and freight cost is given 12%. So you have to subtract this 12% of this 37,60,000, because this has to be borne by the exporter. And if you calculate the 12%, this will give you 4,51,200, and after subtraction you will get 33,08,800, right? And this is nothing but the after free order value, right? Free on board value, that is called FOB value. Is it clear? Now that is 33,08,800. Now on this value bank will ask for margin value also. And what is the margin value? Which is 1/4, which is 25%, right? So you subtract the 25% of this 33,08,800, and 1/4 of this will give you how much? This will give you 8,27,000. If you calculate, this will give you 8,27,200, and after subtraction you will get how much? 24,81,600. So this is the final pre-shipment credit. This is the 24,81,600 is the final amount which the bank provided in the form of loan to the exporter, right? This is how you have to calculate. Now the next question is, what is the exchange rate for bill purchase? See, I am telling about bill purchase. Bank is purchasing the bill. When bank is purchasing the bill? When exporter shipped the document and he went to the bank with the bill, and he give the bill to the bank, and in exchange he asked for the rupees. So this is where the bank is purchasing the bill. And since the bank is purchasing the bill, you have to take the bill buying rate. But see, you have to take the premium also. So first of all you will take the spot rate, which is nothing but 74.85, and you have to take the premium also. And the premium in this case you will take 4 paisa, which is nothing but 0.04, and after adding you will get 74.89. So this is our bill buying rate. This is the exchange rate for bill, right? Okay. Now the next thing you have to calculate is the post shipment advance. How will you calculate the post shipment advance? So how much amount the bank asked, the customer went to the bank after shipment, that is for $48,000, and you have to multiply it with what? 74.89, which is the bill purchase rate. Okay, so you multiply both of them, After multiplication you will get 35,94,720. Now this is the amount in rupees. So will bank provide the entire finance? No, he will ask for margin also. And what is the margin? 15% margin. So you have to subtract this 15% from this 35,94,720. We know this is the case of FBD, that is foreign bill discounting, and already I have told you that 15% margin is to be borne by the exporter. So after you subtract the 15%, if you calculate the 15%, you will get how much? You will get 5,39,208. So what you need to do? You need to subtract this 35,94,720 minus 5,39,208. This will fetch you 30,55,512. So this is your post shipment value. So after shipment, the bank will provide this much loan to the exporter, right? Now the next question they will ask you to calculate the NDD. What is NDD? Notional due date. You know what is the meaning of notional due date? Notional due date is the time period during till which the bank will charge concessional interest rate. How to calculate that? First of all, you have to see when the when the shipment was done. The shipment was done on 31st August 2021, right? This day shipment was done. And since is the case of Ujans bill, and you know in the case of Ujans bill, to calculate NDD, you add the transit period. You know what is the meaning of transit period? Transit period is the time it takes for the buyer or the importer to pay for the bill, which is nothing but 30 days here. So 30 days transit period is 25 days transit period is compulsory in the case of Ujans bill, and plus 30 days. This is you have to add. So 25 plus 30, this will give you how much? 55 days, right? So you calculate it. So let's start with 31st August 2021. First of all, you add 30 days. This you will go to 31st 9 2021, and then you add 25 days. You will go to 25 10 2021. So till this date, concessional interest rate will apply. From 31st August 2021 to 25 October 2021, the concessional interest rate will apply. And after 25 10 2021 till 27 10 2021, the higher interest rate will apply. Like in the case of we have told you that it is okay. So this is how you have to go about calculating all these things, right? So this is how we calculate it. Now tell me, the last question is till when interest will be charged. So interest will be charged with the value date, which is nothing but 27 10 2021. And now how much interest can we charge? This question can also be asked, right? So this is how we have to solve this type of question. Friend, if you need such type of case study explanation for all the subjects, for all the chapters of BFM, you can enroll in our BFM comprehensive course. I will provide you every explanation in the lucid manner. In this chapter alone, I have provided 3 to 4 more case study explanation in our video lecture. So to get more detail regarding how to get this case study, please WhatsApp me on the number. I am providing you the number. The number is provided in the